Peace, family, peace. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you for your patience. We got it just this thing just keep going. It's not stopping. We in that age where it's gonna happen whether you like it or not. The information is gonna be available. I'm thankful that I'm one of the sources in today's show. I'm thankful to be able to bring this brother up on the stage, up on the platform. This brother been doing it for a real long time. He's been around before Facebook. He's been around before MySpace. He's been around before YouTube. He's been around before Instagram. He's been around before Twitch. He's been around before Twitter. He's been around before X. He's been around before all these platforms when it was just VHS tapes, when it was just the underground and you had to go to certain people to get information, man. And with that being said, it's going to be a classic show, so get comfortable. With that being said, I want to welcome back to the platform. Welcome back to Black Magic 363, none other than Sevan Bomar.
What do you say to that?
Oh, man.
I like the intro too, before Prodigy, before America Online, we was in the mix.
Man.
They call it the golden age because we got a chance to even touch the rotary phone, and now we're here with super intelligence, and we're still young and feeling good.
Hey, Sevan, I want to ask you, how does it feel before we get started with the show? How does it feel to have done this for so long and to have done it at a high level for so long? I noticed in my position, I interviewed so many people. I noticed some people, information for whatever reason, after about 3-4 years, it's overwhelming, or their personal life takes over, or it's just too much for them. Their mind, some people's their mind, they can't handle it. Some people, it's just that they get tired of the information and it's just a phase in their life. But how does it feel to be heavy into this information for the amount of time that you have been into it? Like, what type of experience, what is that like for you, my brother?
I mean, I guess one of the best words to put on it would be surreal. It's almost like you can stand next to yourself because your deeds really speak for themselves. And through all those phases that you just named that happens to people, I've been through all of those. I definitely, I got married, I have a child. That's an incredible journey in itself. I had to manage the matrix side, from, just staying alive even after COVID and, making sure I stay in control of my sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then there's the spiritual, which is always knocking on my door. Like I'm hot, if you may, meaning that it's like, it always can get live with me because I'm aware of certain things. Mm-hmm. And that really becomes a perfect conduit for the ancestors. All there is to really get something out there that may be, you got to get that right speaker. You got to get that right mouth and that right level of intelligence and that right essence to bring something like that forward. And so, of course, what we're engaged in always is bringing more and more beings like that into the matrix. Mm-hmm. And, because many of us are on different levels, spiritual levels that have already kind of dialed out of just, you could get banged on in the comment section and that'd be enough for you.
That's facts. I've seen it happen.
If your feelings are, in one place and you come with like this positive message that you're really going to, you want to deliver something to somebody and then somebody say, get that shit out of here, man. You don't know, right. You have to be able to now look at yourself and realize, hey, is this about the message and the mission or is this just about you? Right. And then also you'll notice we have a tendency to be a bit prone to negativity. That's just kind of how the matrix rolls on the wobble. And so because of that, a lot of times you see more of the negative stuff than you see the positive. So you see more of the cons and the pros. Mm-hmm. And if your spiritual growth is really accurate and real, it makes you want to be like, you know what, maybe that's just also one of my passions and desires is to just be here talking to people. You know what I mean? But for me, there's a mission. And I thought about even before I jumped in the show, because that mission is really about you, right? Like this is a part of what you're expected to do. You're expected to come to your people with the best that you have, to come to your tribe with the best and trust that they're doing the same for you. And with that, we can live forever, like for real. And now we could definitely know that we're in a realm of division. And so there's a lot of conflict, and no matter how you put it, something that's gathered together and working, especially as even one unit, is way more powerful than something divided. So when you could get a tribe or even a nation all really on one accord and moving, it's definitely something to be reckoned with. So that's why I feel like we've faced so much operations, so many operations just to keep the brilliant amongst us. And not only just that, but the strong amongst us, the spiritually resilient. You know, there's archetypes in the matrix, and you know, we peak those archetypes because of our DNA. And so what that means is that if you could put those power teams together, you know, you really begin to be able to deal with situations like we're experiencing right now, because we have spiritual power, you know, versus the powers of the world. You know what I mean? So.
Indeed. No, indeed. Yeah, it's you know, I'm glad to have this conversation with you tonight. You know, we talked earlier, and we, by the way, family, in the next couple of weeks, I would say in the next 2 weeks, week or two, me and Sevan got a huge announcement coming for y'all, so stay tuned for that. Just checking in with the channel for that. We got a big announcement that's going to benefit humanity, so just be on the lookout for that. But earlier when I talked to you, we talked about, you know, you talked to me about the importance of, you know, discussing what's going on in the occult realm, and I love that you wanted to talk about that. And I named the show. I didn't see your the WhatsApp text. I named the show "Feeding the Ethers." A lot of us, you know, and when I say feeding, I mean give our attention, our energetic currency to. A lot of us, some of us give our energy to the invisible realm, and the occult means hidden. It means hidden. It could be non-visible, something you can't detect without like a specialized instrument. So we use the word occult a lot, and a lot of people give their energy to this invisible realm. A lot of us give our energy to the visible realm, and often the people who master or give more attention to the invisible realm ends up controlling the people who give their attention or feed the visible realm. One realm is the realm of cause, one is the realm of effect. Phil Valentine used to say that. And I look at it like this before you get started, Sevan. And I'm using like this street analogy, this like hip hop street analogy, family, where if we have somebody on the street that's, you know, a lot of us seen Scarface, and we knew the plug behind Scarface was Sosa. And imagine if you have somebody on the corner, maybe selling you drugs or, you know, doing street activities, some weed or something like that. Then you got this huge supplier that's supplying everybody in the community, and you have an option about who you want to connect with and, you know, do business with. I'd rather do business with the plug, and the ethers is like the plug. The ether supply, all of us, is the ultimate supplier. It's supplying everybody down here. So why don't we go to the plug, the source, or learn how to tap into that source or to that plug? And the occult, the hidden realm, that's what we're discussing tonight. I'm thankful to be discussing that with my brother who's been in this game very long. It's not just about a trend. It's not just about what's cool. This brother was into this when it wasn't cool. So with that being said, let's have this talk on the ethers, the occult realm. What's new? What's going on? What information are we behind in? Sevan Bomar, the floor is yours. What's going on? 2025. They say today is July 18th, Friday. What's happening, Sevan? What's happening?
You know, like I said, I first of all, you know, I want to give thanks for even being here.
Yeah.
You know, being alive. You know, it took a lot to put this together. You know, there's a lot of coordination that has to go in aligning these stars properly. Again, like, just to begin this the proper way, just want to definitely give thanks to the guides, the ancestors, etc. All there is, the DNA, you know, whatever you want to call it today, the universe, for allowing us to be here, allow us to be conscious, and also give us an opportunity to get in tune yet again and to increase who we are. So that's how it's got to begin. I also want to, you know, put a little disclaimer around the conversation, because we got to get real tonight. This is really about souls. That, you know, this is what's happening right now. Like, this is not exercising more. This is real world. So, you know, I want to make sure, though, that I begin this with expressing to everyone that what I talk about and what I say, I in no way mean to offend you. if in your beliefs and, you know, where you're at right now. What I'm here to tell you is that I've actually ran the full gamut a couple times. And I just really get into this. The running title for the show tonight was also Spiritual Polymath, which means, you know, you can be a savant at one thing, like play the piano like super well or something like that. And then everything else you may fail at. Like I really have a little bit more of a multidisciplinary going on different levels, but my real tune in is the spiritual aspect of things. And I've always said that spirituality as a word means the study of spirits, yet many don't really know the identity of spirits. So I'll just put it like that. They'll argue with you. And that's really, you know, what there's another part of the consciousness that wants to be right about everything. And what I'm saying here today is that to learn is really to be balanced. To grow and to reach the depth stage is actually seeing how it all connects. That's why we use the word all the self. And when you haven't figured out how something connects into all this, that's just the journey. That's the journey that you have to go on. So I say all is self, and however long it takes you to figure it out is how long you will be here, right? So that's the maxim. And so I want to begin with that. I also wanted to, you know, start off by, you know, changing the perspective and the framework a little bit of what we're going through. I really would like us today to look at our experience like a movie. For sure, the characters and the bodies, the castings and all that have been really laid out. So it is up to you to take on a new form and a new role and to be an actual main actor in your life if you choose to be. But trust that this realm and quite a few other ones, how they operate, the reason why I call it movie is just what it's saying right there. You move E. In this case, E is energy. E is a trident. E is a symbol of the three waves of energy. And what this means is that this concept of God needing you to do something is really just a lower level, because the universe, if you may, is not going to ask you what it wants to do, what it wants you to do, and all of that, and encourage you like, yeah, you need to do this. No, the universe works in a way, because it's so vast, so intelligent, that you do what it wants you to do naturally. And if you don't do it, you can't be here. So when I say move energy, when we breathe, just like you don't know where the wind comes from and you don't know where it goes, symbolically, the wind is the spirit. So when we're breathing in and out, we're doing the first basics of moving E, which is to breathe the souls and move the souls around. In addition to that, all of these powers that need to be moved around, you can't live without for a certain period of time. That's really how the planets are set up. So obviously air is the primary in certain ways. There's ether before that, but what you know about air. And so if you don't get air for a certain period, you're out of here. So also, just on a spiritual note, there is a system of spiritual growth and teaching that has been highly effective since the ancient times. And it has been nullifying the elements, meaning that the elements don't actually affect you the same way that other people, it affects other people. So like you could be virtually impervious to things like heat. You could go for longer periods without having air, and you could slide down the rest of the elements and see that you can exercise certain powers that make the element itself not have as much control over you. And people who have done that have broke out of the matrix. And so there are many ways to break through, if you may. What we're going to do today is just kind of go through a few of them and also make that relevant to 2025. I always say that, you know, spirituality needs an update. It's like running around in the old school Model T, literally, of the last system that came through that everybody got programmed by. We'll just put it that way. And so always be ready to metamorphosize your truth. And as Rich was even talking about earlier, like, you know, why don't you just go directly to the connect? You are the connection. So that means going directly there is to actually have no gods before you, which is really, you know, a part of the commandments is like, yo, yeah, thou shalt not have any God before me. But this is something that is actually introspection, is something that you should be saying to yourself. Now, again, since I mentioned that it's a movie, this also, again, means that when we see ourselves in a certain pattern or a certain path in life, and we almost find it insurmountable to change that according to how we think, like, yo, I need more money to do this, or how I'm ever going to get further with shorty, or, you know, and it's just a whole laundry list. And we all have them of reasons why we feel like that next level, you know, can't really happen for us. In ancient times, all the way up until now, the masters know that that just means that you need to change gears. Literally, you need to change chakras, because chakras are wheels, they're planets, and they also correspond to the archetypical personalities. So when you want to see change and transformation in yourself because you've actually been in one gear and that gear is not cutting it, it could even be damaged. You could feel like, man, my back or my leg or something like that is also messed up. So you got that on top of my health and all this stuff stacked up. This is why we move into other chakras when we want to make magnificent changes into our lives. And so this message today is about these big transformations, but it's also going to be so real that you're going to leave with actionables of what to do that will begin to increase dramatically your presence in the spiritual world, which is tested through the dream plane. How you are carrying on in the dream, whether you're like the, you know, running from things and, you know, you're kind of less of the aggressor in the dream, versus if you're actually coming in and you're actually reaching lucidity very clearly. Like, these are the weights and the measures that control all of these things. And to be honest, if we had just schools coming right out with this, like the same way that our kids watch these TV shows and the SpongeBobs and all of that, and just it was just that they were watching and they weren't really shown anything else, all of these powers and all these abilities would really not just come naturally, but they would be enhanced based on the new being that's actually coming. Because every time we come together and we bring something new into this world, it is a summation of the beings that actually are there in attendance, actually putting that new energy forward. So we're constantly upgrading. Like, I actually used to think that we were kind of downgrading and becoming like degenerated in a certain way. And I was shown directly that, nah, actually what's happening is you're reaching certain levels of advancement. Like, even the children are at a different level of advancement. So the glass is not half empty, my friend. It's actually going in the other way. And so that, of course, was very encouraging. So in beginning this, and I wanted to kind of start this early because I know we always have like a real runtime with these bills. Like, you know, my brother don't like to be standing there for 4 hours, like getting drilled with something. So I wanted to let everybody know that if you have a question or something, you should probably put it in the chat now, because, you know, maybe we will see it. Maybe we'll scroll back by it. Maybe we'll even go through the thread later on and see what the questions were. I'm sure we'll have some Q&A towards the end of the show. But just remember, like, just to feel the pulse or the heartbeat of the tribe is great when you're interacting and you're putting those questions in there, because also there are pillars in the chat where they'll give you an answer to what you need to know right away. So that is something I wanted to, you know, make sure we engage early with. So, you know, I got a roll on this, my great friend. So meaning that if you wanted to kind of jump in and ask anything, or you just want me to kind of like continue and fire off on just, you know, what I really want to deliver today, like, I'm all ears. But I just want to make sure I'm leaving room for the dialogue here.
Well, Sevan, sometimes it can seem like information might be stagnant. Some communities may have access to more information, or some communities just may be tapping into information that other communities aren't. You're global, Sevan. You're in Costa Rica and you build with people all over the planet. What's the vibe like? What's the pulse? What are people talking about that you think that is like next level occult information, where you're like, oh shit, I gotta bring this to this community or that community, or yo, we behind over there, or yo, we gotta get into this. Like, what's out there, brother? Because you tap in with everybody, my brother. You tapping all over the world. So I want to know what we need to be tapping in with right now in terms of the occult information right now on Sevan.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna just, you know, go into the occult, to be honest, like, we're pioneering something new. See what I mean? We're all the way out of the box. What they say, me and XY, we off the axis. And what this means is that this is our world, if you may. What we bring, everybody is waiting on, whether they know it or not.
Damn.
And that would just happen anyway when you reach the peak of yourself, because that's what you're going for. If you can't perform the miracle on yourself, there's definitely no reason in wasting your time trying to explain it to everybody else. So listen to this. First of all, I want to bring some commonality here, because many people just don't know me, right? Like, how much do I know about you? And even when I explain certain things, that only gives you a picture of what I'm about. But one thing about it is I like to really listen to what people are saying, because I can already understand what else they've been through if they say that they've done certain things. So I'm less on like, I'll look at someone's profile and be like, well, if they've been able to achieve all of this, this is what they must know. And I'll go at them directly with those things, right? Because I'm also looking for something myself. So I need to know how to ask those questions the proper way. Let's talk about the process of getting to me knowing now how to ask the questions the proper way. And I'm going to try to do this as rapid as possible, but I grew up in the 90s, and as we were talking about earlier, and in the 90s, there was some really powerful vibes happening, but there was definitely some big agendas and projects being played out on the youth from those times. It was like we even invented nostalgia to a certain degree. Like we had O-Dog and Menace to Society, and we had Goonies. You see what I mean? So the mixture of what was happening with, we had Breakin' to Electric Boogaloo. We had, of course, Michael Jackson and Prince. Which one do you like? We had so many things in our culture that I really got a chance to fully immerse in what one would consider a quality matrix, meaning that it's put together so well that you can't even tell that this is actually a matrix. So in coming from that, I can say that that Hollywood for sure had a big influence on me. Movies had a big influence on me. Music later on, because music was like, at first, certain music was coming out, like, UTFO and this kind of stuff. It was way too X-rated for children to be listening to. And that was like the first rap, right? So the movies and things that were coming out was really pushing us to do certain things and be a certain way. And a lot of times what controlled that was really, especially for a male, is how much the women liked you. If you were making moves and doing things and, had your hair parted down the middle and you had a gun in your waist, shorties was going to be checking for you, right? But before that ever happened, you went to juvenile hall, you went to youth authorities or YA, and you got initiated into a whole nother world that you didn't even really know that you were going to be a part of. Meaning that I don't think any of us, when we start coming through these matrices, think that we're going to be involved in some of the most horrific things that go on in matrices. We kind of come in like la-di-da. They call that boy meets world. And then all of a sudden, wham, you're getting rug pulled. Now, also, in that time, all the parents, or not all of them, but a lot of the parents, they either wanted to keep partying because partying was like, I know there's quite a few of us can remember our parents like, yo, I'm going out, right? And also drugs hit really heavy. So that was crack and all of that. So many of us raised ourselves and also off of this material and off of these ideas. And what also survived, though, was what later on could be encapsulated in the Western world as the American dream, an idea basically that you could do anything you want, like an American Idol, that, whether you sing or whether you dance or whatever it is that you do or whether you hustle, that somehow you can make it to the top. And that was embedded like so deep that that's how we moved through the matrix, if you may, from my time. And that got you into a lot of stuff. One of the things that I could say was a turning point in my life once I reached what many perceive to be success. This just means having the cars, having the businesses, having the influential friends, is once I reached that stage, I actually understood at that point that the people that I was around knew nothing about what I was really seeking. because after all, that was actually my goal. I had made it a mission to get with more influential people because I start feeling the void in the world early on in life. Like, yo, what is this all really for? It's like, if you can have all the money in the world, but then you die, why would you want all the money in the world? Why wouldn't you just spend all the money in the world on figuring out what happens when we die? And so I was that type of child. But one side of me was extremely intelligent. This is just from looking at it, like a gifted and talented, magnet school, all this kind of stuff was happening, straight A's, right? Even being bullied for that. But also I had bad conduct. I was getting a C and D in conduct, class clown, right? Just trying to, make my own way amongst my peer group, right? And it's interesting that even today I found out that those magnet schools, those GATE programs, those Tech, Edison Tech, and these kind of different schools, they actually are looking at conduct as a number one. And then so when they say, hey, you're on the waiting list, then one day we're gonna call you, you're on the waiting list. You'll never get called, because what they're looking at is, will this person conform? So I was already segmented out early in life as a person that was highly intelligent but non-conformable. And that's many of us. And so for especially a Black man, there's only one route they want to send you. And ultimately, the decisions that you can make in life will actually lead you there. And of course, I'm talking about prison. So there's great authors like Umberto Eco who mentioned that in prison, one or two things is going to happen for a man. Either he's going to lose himself entirely, or he's going to find it all. And this is because this is when you're confronted with the moment of realizing that it's no longer about everybody else. And everybody else is probably actually one of the bigger reasons why you landed where you are.
Indeed.
And now you got to figure it out. Now you got to be with the solo. And in that solo, what you have is what's talking to you in your mind. So I'm going to segue right there. What's talking to you in your mind? Mm-hmm. Let's look at this chart just really quick.
Okay.
And we'll use it as a reference. I'm going to put it up here on the screen. And we will, again, because some will argue against these time frames, I'll ask you to just use them as ratios. And so no matter what time frame we're actually talking about, we're just saying how long it takes for species to graduate and come into life, and how long they've been here, right? Because this is based on other things like how long it takes to develop certain appendages and this type of thing. And I want us just to focus really quickly on the reptile versus the human, because all the other numbers up there, they get really crazy. But that the reptile literally has 300 million years in the ratio over the mammal or the human as you see it. And what I like to look at that now is like 300 million years worth of baggage. Because while a lot of people like to separate this reptile as like it's the one terrorizing the world and another species, they fail to realize that our DNA is actually embedded with all of those things that I show you on the chart just now. Continuing all the way up to the top with the crystal, because we have a pineal gland sitting in the middle of our forehead. So when we want to understand what kind of equipment that we're actually working with, this gives us a really good idea of realizing how long, if you want to see that as distance and time, this process has been going on and what we've really gained from this process. It's known in the occult that during the time that you're saying is 300 million years ago on this chart, right, with the reptile, what we gain from the image of the reptile, just like it says in the Bible, like I'm going to make man in my own image. What this is talking about and referring to is that it's going to become a part of our imagination. It's going to give us the ability to converse and think to ourselves. And in that, what it's going to grant us is immortality. Okay, this is what we learn. And this is what we come to experience, meaning that what immortality really is that no matter what, even when you die, you're going to be there talking to yourself. Yo, what happened? Yo, I think we must be dead. And through a series of events, you're actually going to think yourself back into existence again, because this is all a mind anyway. And may the strongest mind win, which is the sun. But the reality here is that we think and then we become. And because after 300 million years of evolution of one particular species connected to us, what you can call the ancestor, we gain the ability to continuously run the wheels of consciousness within our being, like somewhere where you can't really pinpoint it. You're having this conversation with yourself and it's outside of the brain. So the reason why I want to put that there is because you can still imagine, though, especially based on your archetype, based on your tribe, what that conversation could really be like based on the world that you're living in. So tell me, is there anyone who can stop their dreams indefinitely? Is there anyone who can stop their thoughts indefinitely? I don't think you will find one. Now, meditation is the practice of stopping your thoughts for prolonged periods of time. And that's why it leads you into all types of stuff as long as you don't look at it, as long as you don't think about it.
Right.
You see what I mean? But that is the mere definition of meditation in itself, is to, move out of the monkey mind. But still, if you've ever done the experiment yourself and just start breathing, be like, yo, let's stop talking. As you saying this, yo, let's be silent.
Right.
You'll catch yourself like 2 minutes later in a whole thought, like, yo, then be like, yo, what happened, man? We were supposed to not be thinking, right? Mm-hmm. It's extremely difficult to control this, but imagine trying to control your dream to a point where you stop the dream. You can't dream. These kind of things are not possible at this stage. And that's what lets us know the power. Now, this is held up into different types of symbols. But this is, again, the key rudimentary point to understanding what's going on here. You have what they call an id or ID that you have nurtured. Some call it actually Kundalini. Some call it a dragon, a baby dragon. It sits in the coccyx of the spine. Some call it worm. Some call it the being from the underworld. Some call it the old king. Some call it Saturn. They got so many different terms. But to describe this same serpent-like energy that you're cultivating, and they like to say that you basically have two of them. And this is what the hemispheres of the brain is. So you got like an angel or a devil or a good one or a bad one or a positive and a negative, a man and a woman. This is how the body is always designed in twos of everything, right? And so this, if you kind of pull back off of it and start looking at the experience, you could tell that all of the other stuff that goes on in the matrix is really just a distraction from something that is still rather complex to really get your grip on. Meaning that actually getting into this type of wisdom and digging deeper into yourself and figuring out these mysteries is not really going to be commonplace anyway. Why? So again, we're just going to go from a couple points and we're going to establish some things. You know how they call it the square?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a Masonic term, right? What if I tell you that the Masonic square, from a external performance of the craft, is the town square? Okay, that makes sense, especially if you understand the history of Freemasonry and the King of England, and how you have a building that needs to go on, but this building is an expansion. I need more men to go to different places to set up a fortress and more operations. It's just as direct as that. Right. We don't want to talk about anything spiritual. It's like, can you assist in expanding this? And so they'll come in and they'll set up the town square. And it's the things that they put in that town square that give you all of the awareness of how the cult works. But there's one key fundamental that is attempting to undermine, and it is your sovereignty. Think about all of the masters that you've seen come through, like Asir, the Duke of Tears, and many of them that know about what was the status of everybody before these ruling factions come in. They are sovereigns. And a sovereign, why many think about that just from like the first levels, like maybe your banking, maybe, again, your legal status, these kind of things. The most highest level is actually your spirit.
Mm.
Okay, your spiritual sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
This is why the first thing that's built on the square is a church or a cathedral, which also doubles as a fortress and is generally called the mission. Okay, so this for sure means that whatever kind of spiritual system is currently purveying the land is absolutely a tool to remove a person from their identity, their sovereignty. And it was with that I became extremely unpopular. I became blacklisted even on YouTube without even knowing it. Because one of the things that I was seeing right away when tapping into the spiritual plane and actually really being there, through a process I'm going to pick up on here in a moment, was just how your spiritual sovereignty was usurped if you put something else in between you and all there is, you and the totality. And that's all they wanted to do first was like, yo, here it is. And then you just fill in the blanks. I don't want to offend anybody today. Here it is. And it will always be something outside of you,
Right.
generally.
Right.
There would be a lot of exoteric, like, here's what he looks like.
Mm.
You know, here's what he's asking from you. The other thing is you always be a male.
Yeah. No.
So,
Yeah.
you know, there's many masters that have come and built on just this, right? But let's let that be the awareness of what the square is to set up a church, then a courthouse, because a courthouse is going to move all the papers in the treaties, the contracts that are going to remove the sovereignty more. And this is what I'm just saying is, remember, this is all about sovereignty, legacy. These are the only two words, your sovereignty, legacy, because on your sovereignty, once they get a wedge in on the spiritual sovereignty, then again, the courthouse is there. Let's see whose land this is. Let's map out this land. Let's write up some deeds. Let's also prosecute. Let's do all this. This happens at the courthouse. Then here's the bank. Now, each of these are things that in time as a sovereign, we're supposed to be responsible for. So our currency is generally based on what it is that we're consuming, right? Because that's what we would generally be paying for. And we would be trading with that. We've been completely removed from that system in most cases. People just use the money, but they generally don't even have the solar panel or the technology for their power. They don't have any control of their water or their wells, and they don't grow enough food to actually sustain everybody in the house. So no longer there is no sovereignty in that way. There could be some partial sovereignty, and this is what we want to also start building towards. Is each of these we want to start chipping back away with, but let's just say as it is, that sovereignty has been removed. Now currency systems in place. They put a school there. We already get that because, you know, show me the child, give me the child, I'll show you the man. So as that teaching and indoctrination is coming through for the younger folks, that's actually ensuring that there's going to be no real pushback in the future. We're living in the future right now. There's very little pushback to the systems that are actually in play that we know are not benefiting us, especially again on those spiritual levels. I mean, the pushback from the rebel stage of the children, because the children are the ones that are supposed to be like, yo, that Christianity and all that kind of stuff. They're the ones that are supposed to be pioneering that new thing. See what I mean? They have the police station. This is who's protecting us. How are we protecting ourselves? Are we trained to protect ourselves? Did we ensure that there were pillars in the community that protect the daughters, protect the mothers, right? So again, I'm not here today to talk about, hey, this is what the community needs to do. I'm showing you when I talk about building, these are the things that I look at because that's why they call them builders. They have the formulas, they have the templates. This is why it's so difficult for some people in many ways to rise all the way into prominent wealth, have applications, technologies, and still be a good person, giving away money and helping people in the community and all that kind of stuff. It's such a disastrous terrain to try to travel through because there's so many mistakes that you can make that can completely ruin not only your financial, but everything else that you have. And so it's like you're going down a minefield. And for many of us, we're going down that minefield alone because we don't have comrades and people that are also inside of our society or inside of our group working with those same objectives and those same agendas. Then finally, I'm almost done here. We have the hospital, right? So notice how they keep going in on the sovereignty. Now we don't have the herbs anymore, per se. You know, I'm not saying that there's not communities with herbs, but you understand what I'm saying. We don't have the herbs anymore. And, you know, you even had an herb cabinet in the house. We're just now restoring these things. But when some big stuff happened, though, is what I'm saying. When a leg break off, or when someone's about to deliver a baby, unless we're going to go to the doula, but or when somebody gets bit by a snake, everybody's going right to the hospital versus where their medicines are and where their knowledge of the medicine is. So in that way, certain level of sovereignty and what's going on with regeneration is removed. Finally, we have the utilities, right? That's when they break it all the way down. They got the trains even running through, they got the electricity, and they got all that kind of stuff. They built the infrastructure. That is the matrix. And when you slam that cube down, it doesn't actually even matter the spiritual aspects of how it's connected and what's going on, because that goes on way back in the accepted lodge in England. It's strictly on the ground, command and conquer, right? So in that structure, when you journey and look at a city, most of nothing comes out of that structure. And when that structure is being maintained, and this is why I thought that even learning about Freemasonry was like going to be a cult thing, right? To only realize, like within books like The Bridge to the Light, that beyond the initiations into the lower Goetia, there is really no spiritual content there. It's really a physical building. There's a speculation of it, which that's why I call it speculative Freemasonry. But other than that, it's a physical building. Like, hey, expand the land of the king. But when you go and watch any movie about Scotland, King James, and any of what was going on in Britain and founding fathers and all that kind of stuff, you see right away that, no, this is a militia of men. So I mention things like this because we even come into the spiritual field, especially when we make it beyond the lower level religions in the moon, the lords, as they're called. We come in thinking that these societies and things maintain high levels of spiritual knowledge. And we even kind of aspire to get that knowledge even from them or to see what they have. And that's why today they could be like, yo, in this 33, it means this and this. And people are like, oh, or your video could say, oh, the secrets of the Freemasons. Somebody, oh, let me click on that. Like they feel like that this is where the knowledge is going to come from. And I'm here to tell you today, you know, as I pick up on that voice in the mind, is that I started to have in this voice in my mind when I was by myself. I kept just thinking, man, look what you got me into. That's what I kept saying. Like I was talking to something else. And I kept realizing when I was in that conversation that I meant that while I was in play, if you may, that this thing kept egging me on, like, yo, do this, yo, man, we making moves, yo, this, get this happen and make that happen, right? So this was like a whole narrative, and I almost like ran nonstop, 24/7, until I ended up somewhere where then it was that same voice was more of like, man, see what you got us into. So it was like a narrative that I felt was really strange, like. It seems like something's almost leading me into my demise, but then when I get there, it doesn't want to take responsibility and doesn't even want to hang out, even maybe wants to leave. These are things that I was kind of conscious of. So of course, with many, like many have, the first thing that I started doing is seeing how to get my spirit right. And the first thing they do is they throw in front of you a Bible, for sure. But for me, since I came through the movement in the 90s, this was Elijah Muhammad, Walid D. Muhammad. This was other communities that were actually sprouting up during that time, but mainly that one because I was born in Detroit, raised in San Diego. So when I was coming up in these communities, there was a prerequisite that we couldn't do a lot of things that our teachers and instructors let us know was really going to lead us astray. And my mom took all that to heart. So we didn't have sugar in the house. We didn't have salt at certain times because they say, hey, that is no good. You know, we didn't have TV at certain times. We even had to make our own clothes at certain times. And all this was utterly terrible for me. It literally had what I felt like was a slingshot effect. The moment that I could get out and run away, that was the first thing I did. But that was how I was raised. And so when I got into that situation and I started realizing, hey, I need to tighten myself up, the first thing that I came to was just my spiritual teachings thus far. And we were given a basket of spiritual books to read rather than having a TV. And those characters inside of those books, which included City Epigrapha, Apocryphas, Qurans, etc., became my heroes per se. And so when I wanted to get myself right, I didn't really want to seek to be a pastor. I wanted to be a prophet because I knew a prophet had something that the pastors didn't even have. And I had seen this in growing up. We've all seen this, the Presbyterian church versus the, okay, I can't say maybe that's a little buzzer, but the Presbyterian church versus the Baptist church, Pentecostal church.
Right.
Holiness, Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues, all of this stuff as a child. I'm sitting there monitoring this and even sometimes like getting baptized. They want to baptize you at every church you go into, right? So all of these processes I'm watching as a child and I'm saying, man, I'm developing my idea of what God really is. So that way, when I got to that point and I say, hey, I want to tap in, that's what I had already visually, spiritually, etc., taught myself that this is what I needed to tap into. I needed to find the God of this Bible. And that, because I was serious about that, it led me into understanding everything about what I'm explaining to you right now on these high levels. Because over a series of events, the first thing that I knew that I needed to do, that if I wanted to talk to God, was I needed to get the Holy Ghost. And they had a formula for that, I remember, in the church. Hey, you just say hallelujah over and over and over again until it happened. They call it tarrying for the Holy Ghost. So I did that. I was in a cell tarrying for the Holy Ghost. The first time, nothing happened. In fact, actually something did happen. When I got to the end, it was about 2 hours and they start popping the doors and everything, letting all the rest of the other guys in and stuff like that. So I had to stop. When I got to the mirror, by then I'm crying and everything, because it's breaking me down. And I said, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. And then I looked in the mirror and then another voice said, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. And man, that floored me because I knew it wasn't my voice. And from how I was taking it, it was literally saying, yo, I got you. And I'm not going to give up either on having you. And man, even when I went to bed that night, I felt terrible because even at this stage, I'm trying to be spiritual. So I'm even realizing, yo, it seems like you got something evil in you. You see what I mean? So I'm talking about real stuff here. So to make a long story short, second time I go in, nothing happens. I'm in there like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I still can't get the spirit to descend, as they say. And I tell you what, I kind of like gave up on the whole thing after a while. I ordered a bunch of books. I started reading the Bible. I read the Bible like 3 times. And a dude literally came to me and said, hey, God told me what you're seeking him to get from him, he'll give you today. And so that day, it happened. I'm in there. I go on the process again because I know what he's telling me. This guy's supposed to be like, an old pastor, prophet. Now he's back in jail, blah, blah, old head. But I know what he's telling me. So I go through the whole process again and it happens. Boom. Something comes in and pushes everything out. And I can hear tongues speaking like 4 layers back in my brain, another language saying stuff. I'm even trying to ask what is being said, but realizing it's so far away, as they say, the devil can't even hear it. He can't even perceive it so that he cannot be involved. This is what they tell you in the church, right? So boom, I'm on my way. I'm going to fast forward the story, but I want you to understand just how deep this gets. So now after that happens, boom, I'm on my way. Like I come in through this pod and I start taking men from the level that they were at to going like, spiritually on another level, crying, really done with the crying, ready to marry shorty. All types of stuff is happening. I'm moving the pod with this power and I'm still studying, but I'm also studying outside of what would be the standard Bible at this stage. I got books coming in and I'm also super lucid. It's like, because I couldn't go anywhere physically, it was like my spirit couldn't accept that. So it constantly traveled every night. This was something that I often experienced as a child, even like I naturally was always lucid, but it kind of went away and then it had now come back. And so what I would notice when you get on the dream plane is that when you use certain words, the spirit or whatever was corresponding to that word would come immediately. Generally, the world that you were in would be so affected by it, you would almost feel like, then that word is like terrible. So I learned right away that when people call on entities, it's not that they don't arrive. It's just Earth is on such a time lag. It takes them a minute to come through these aethers. This is why a person has to even tarry for this kind of thing. Because what you're doing is you're saying something over and 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 over. And it's like a call until you phase into where that call is still traveling, and then you connect. Somebody pick up the phone. Yo, what you want? This is what ancestor communication has always been like. But what number are you dialing? Okay. So I had this experience, and then now I'm super lucid, but I always see in the dream, like I'm being offered generally some very beautiful woman, if you may, or what's behind door number 2. And I could never see what's behind door number 2. I can't tell you all the time I chose door number 2, but every time I did, I will always see and experience something that was way far out. And those would be other stories. But I began to travel through the spiritual world through door number 2. But one of the things that I began to notice was that the God, if you may, because there was a lot of spiritual lore and stuff going on, but the God seemed to be kind of jaded. Like there was a constant battle, a constant war, a constant idea that it was good versus evil. And all the way until one event where I actually came in contact with one would perceive to be an angel. I was swooped up by this being and then being taken up. And I was so terrified of the experience, I ended up using multiple words to break out of that and to come back into this world. And in the end, what I began to gain from all of this was that there were many gods, and that there was also a war, there was an army. And you had joined also this army because of you coming in with these scriptures and coming in with this Bible and coming in with this Jesus. And you understood nothing about what this war was really about. And you were actually shunned away from even knowing what it was about. So in my final experience, I asked, because I had a direct communication with what many would perceive to be the God. I'll say the God of this world. I said, what about my power? And it shunned me. It was like felt disrespected that I would even ask, where does my power come from? And in that way, I got a feeling, it kind of like sent off a feeling like, you're on your own now. You're your own God.
Indeed.
And now that you're your own God, you're going to be responsible for everything that goes on in your life. But you're also not going to have the same holdups that people have because they're affiliated with a God. And this is what I've been funning on teaching to the community, is that my personal experience from seeing many beings and now researching them, having all their names, knowing all their stories, etc., is that when you interoperate with a go-between or another entity from a religious system, you shortchange your power and your sovereignty to a level that doesn't allow you to get beyond to understand the stuff that then comes with breathing, that then comes with taking care of your body and realizing that your body is actually connected in your spirit and that this is a marriage. It doesn't allow you to tap in and tune in with the mother, the great mother, nature, if you want to call it, right? So there's so much that's excluded, but I feel like that if a person doesn't go all the way in whatever it is that they believe in, they never get to the point of realizing that there's something beyond it. You see what I'm saying? If that makes sense. It's basically what I'm saying is that if you're playing even in the religion, you're just going to stay in the religion. If you're playing even in the craft, whatever you're working with, you're just going to stay in that. But if you really went to the maximum of it, you would realize like, man, it's really like it's levels. And now I'm at the level now where I'm fully responsible for myself because I'm really working with my sovereignty now.
Indeed.
And then all of that extra baggage that I was even explaining earlier with the wars that are going on, like between, codename Yahweh and codename Allah, Enki and Enlil, Asmodeus and Solomon, the two brothers are uncles. We could put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
One doesn't inherit all of the cosmic karma that comes with that. Because if you think that that's a game, look at Gaza. It's horrific. Even sitting here watching it, the other day I woke up and my soul cried for Gaza, just out of the blue. You see what I mean? That's how much hurt is happening in relation to these entities and these spirits moving around. So even though I guess what I'm saying is when I may talk about this, there's a side of it that seems like, yo, wow, spirits, astral plane, but everything there has a purpose. It's there for a reason. It knows what it's about. So it's almost like it's very difficult to even enter into those spaces without having some purpose or some type of path assigned to, what you're about.
No, indeed. And in terms of you talking about communicating with certain entities and your calling has to travel through the ethers, so it may take some time. I think that's one of the most difficult things for people is the patience aspect, and not only the patience aspect, Seven, but the idea that, hey, why did 7 prayers get answered and mine didn't get answered yet? Some people's prayers seem to get answered at a much faster rate, which causes confusion, jealousy, and a lot of things. So I want to bring something to the equation with what you said about us, about the light traveling the ethers, because from what I understand, Seven, is that from a photon's point of view, it doesn't travel, it just exists at both ends. So light doesn't move through time, it's simply in all locations in space and time. So if this light, is it our perception of light traveling the very thing that's slowing the thing from communicating with us in the first place, Seven? And if we didn't have this concept of light traveling, our communication would be instant?
Well, it's about conductivity. This is what I started realizing, that a lot of the things that I had a claim to happening spiritually, which is just how the religion operates. It uses your power and then tells you it's it. That was mine. So you're able to do certain things, but then it says, no, you're able to do those things because of me. And that's how they kind of piggyback onto your energy like that. Because really what it is it's about resonance.
Right.
It's about your ability to be vibrating at a certain frequency to be able to keep that kind of power and keep that energy moving through. You see what I mean? Gotcha. So when a person gets light, look at the word, right? It's light as light shining on me, but it's light also in the weight, right?
Yeah.
And so when a person, they go on the fast, they drop some baggage, they stop cussing, they stop playing maybe some crazy video game, they stop talking to certain girls, they get more honest on certain things, they cut off watching that, that's getting light.
Yeah.
And then the more they drop off, because all those are shells, those are actually really living entities. Those are all urges. That's why the back of the name, what is it? Demiurge. The urges, the goonad. Look at the names. These are goons, right? But our real power was to transmute that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily be afraid of it, not necessarily stomp down on it. I'm gonna slay you. We transmute. They show the shaman at the cave of the world where the serpents are coming out by day. Nebu, right? The first when the spirit of the serum, they call it the serum, a serpent fire seed. When it first comes out, there's a shaman there taking it through the process of getting it up the chain of command, if you may, to then one day, as I said, come forth by day, actually come forth in the middle plane, which is where we're at right now. You see what I mean? And so when you control the resonance, so in this, they learn, okay, this is a lot more about alkalines and acids than sometimes it is about mantras. And then you start realizing that Well, most people are in a condition like, you know, let's say he goes to the stadium, he's eating a hot dog, he's eating a soda. Yeah. So that resonance is in itself a distorted frequency that is now being cultivated. And whatever corresponds to that can feed on that.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, we're smack dab on. And that's why your intention can carry you for a while before you realize what's going on. It's just once you know, you got to move away from it. So a lot of folks, they deep in the religion, and you be like, man, you just can't convince me that this person is evil. And it's because of their intention is still holding them together.
Okay.
But as far as what they're saying, what they're worshiping, and what they're doing, all of it could be involved in wickedness. You see what I mean? And that's something draining your light, because now imagine that same sister that, you know, she's spiritually in tune, et cetera, et cetera. Now imagine her, being off birth control. Okay. Imagine her now eating the proper foods, right? Imagine her. So all the things that even the church will not give her, or even sometimes the mosque will not give, she would technically be able to receive that if she went into the next stage. But where is that next stage? And that kind of, brings me, to a bigger point is, even building, like building these stages, we've been able to isolate again every point that we're being compromised. I would say if a person, the reason why I talk about the spiritual one the most is because that's the one that a person can unleash all the other shackles. And that's also the one that if they don't release that one, all the other ones will never really fully release. So those it'll always be like chasing the money, or, all those other points of sovereignty, there will be something going on, because in the end, when we think of God, if you may, we say that when we get in trouble. Oh God, Jesus, when folks, it's the main thing they reach to when they need to get connected with the time that you're really only being real. That's almost like the only time you're being real, right? When the tongue even is a little metallic because some shit didn't happen so crazy. You blowing a joint down, the police pull up. You so, you scared straight. You know what I mean? Like you start saying your prayers and all this kind of stuff. But see, that it was that kind of energy that allowed me to tap in every time. Meaning that I needed something going on. See, later on, I figured out, hey, what is it with you? Why do you always need something crazy to go on before you connect with all there is? Why can't you simulate that? This is still a dialogue going on. This is how you're still growing intelligently, right? So you're like, why can't you simulate that? Like, why can't we just do maintenance? Why do we wait until our whole life gets rug pulled before we start really listening to what's going on inside? So when I start listening, so first of all, again, so that was the big point. Like once I realized that, God is a little bit different. God is a whole nother level. You see what I mean? And then like a lot of people then connected because they're like, look, okay, so God backwards is dog. What is that dog? Because all beings here, they have a shadow. They call that Shaddai, right? A shell or a shade. Right. So every even if I was an emanation, I would have a shadow. And that's what they like to blame, the God of this world, the king of the underworld. They like to say, hey, it's the sun's shadow. That's what they call it. But he has many names. And in that also, it's literally a choice to go down a certain path. You know what I mean? Like it's literally in this world, it loves to lead down that path. Like I pointed out how the Oscars are connected to Osiris, and Osiris is connected to the underworld. Asmodeus is connected to the underworld also. All these otherworld deities always have the same kind of thing going on. And it's generally awarding people for doing things that is just definitely leading everybody else into division. You see what I mean? Yeah. And so, that's kind of the story. I didn't really want to just dive too much into that, but yeah, I mean, so spiritual sovereignty, being the tipping point, because if you don't, like a lot of folks, they don't have the capital. Indeed. It's like, I'm living in like the trenches. Like, what am I supposed to do in here? Like, you got to get light.
I was going to ask a question, but you just made me think of something that I thought of before. When you talked about the shadow and El Shaddai, I've heard, mirror magic is a big thing where people say affirmations to the mirror. It could be self-hypnotic. You can hypnotize yourself. There's many things you could do by talking to yourself in the mirror. Have you ever done affirmations or said affirmations to your shadow like you would say affirmations to your reflection in the mirror?
See, what you're really doing when you're thinking to yourself is you're coalescing your double, your opposite. They call it the analog. Okay, because basically this is digital, what we're in right now. That's why that's why when I was talking to you earlier, I was like, yo, everything that's really happening here, like as far as the ancient stuff, comes from Sirius. But there's Sirius A, Sirius B, and Sirius C. Like Sirius black, it means pale. Pale is the pale fox, Potolo. Like I say, hey, go tell that fox. So this is, a certain group of beings also known as the jackal or the dog, right? And so then you got Big Five. Like Sirius radio system has a pentagram inside of the eye of the dog. See what I mean? So all this dog symbolism inside of the matrix is almost like a dead ringer in occultism that you need to figure out what is the dog's relationship to all of this. You have to look at even some of the other animals, nature. What is their relationship to all this? And what we find is that the dog is the Ka in a way where it is the next thing. That's why Anubis was sitting there. Like it is the next thing to what man is. That's like man's best friend. The dog be over there sitting, dreaming and everything, thinking about being into a life. Because these are transitory souls. These are basically like when a spirit is born, because it'll come from a serpent. And then if it's coming down this pipeline, it'll then become a dog. And then it'll keep moving through. If it's coming in that direction, you see, some are coming from the other direction where they descend into the bodies, if you may, while others have been ascending in that way through the body. So they are seen almost like new. So all of the dog constellations, like even Mercury is a planet, is a dog, Hermanubis, right? God backwards is dog. Mars is the Cerberus, the three dogs. Romulus and Remus were suckled by wolves. You see what I mean? So all of this constant dog stuff, you know what I mean, is really what's letting us see another mystery about, again, the world, the animals, how the souls get put in here, like what they come through, how long they've been here. And so the serpents, if you may, they're the ones that have maintained the longest process in the matrix. So that's why they often seem to be like the wisest, right? But also the ones that carry the most energy, if you may, like baggage, as I was saying earlier, like lots of thoughts, lots of thinking. Like I wanted to show a few things, just because we know, I feel like we're also getting to that point, because you asked me something earlier, and I was also mentioning, because I wanted to talk occultism, and I think we've done a lot of that today, right? Like we've went in, and I wanted to kind of prelude for those people who feel like that, okay, he's talking over my head. I don't even get it. What are you saying? A dog? What is this? What I'm here to say is, first of all, this knowledge that I'm talking about, it's not like you're going to just learn this stuff in even a year, like a week, let alone like an hour. Like here today, we just come in and we're having a great time. I'm throwing some stuff around. Some are bearing witness, others are looking confused. You see what I mean? But what I was saying earlier about how we have to make sure certain pillars are in place is like we need an empirical work, meaning a book, or I call it a lexicon, that is so embedded with all of the truth, especially from an etymological level, because that's where we can connect things. That's called the artifact, that there's a hidden code inside of the words that tells you this story about all these entities and what they really did, and they came in a ship, and all that kind of stuff is built inside of the language. But also through time, I have come across works, if you may, treaties that will never be seen. Even now with AI, I've been able to go and grab certain books that were never translated into English and translate them to continue to corroborate the entire story about what I'm expressing about the gods, if you may, so people don't be looking at me all crazy. So like I mentioned to you, the jackal, as it reads here, the jackal is a key archetypical figure in the esoteric creation myth who represents a rebellious and incomplete creative force. And this was because how our ancestors created is they created everything in this reality. If you were going to create something in the matrix, you needed to have the twins here. This is why there's a tribe inside of Africa. I think that's, even close to the Igbo tribe where a lot of these traditions come from, that this tribe has the highest amount of twins in the entire world. Everybody's a twin, okay? This will let you understand that the Nomo, if you may, when they designed, they knew that you had to have you and your other one when you came into these matrices, or else it meant that your other one had been sacrificed. That's where the sacrifice of the firstborn comes in at. And now your other, if you may, your double is actually in the other plane. So you're in this plane and your double is in the other plane. That's the body that you're jumping into in the dream. This is why your double would then have to play as your intercessor between you and the spiritual world. It's really like that when you go to sleep and you go into your other body, that's the intercessory point between you and the spiritual world. Generally, the Nomo, they created beings that when you were in this world, there was no separation between you and the spiritual world because you and your twin were able to perceive both of those realities. And as I said, all of this is telepathic. Mm-hmm. There is no words or any of that. That comes later on. That's the whole act of Hermes Thoth, who's a baboon. Baboons bark. Okay, like look at a baboon, look at his mouth, and look at him in nature. He's a dog. You see what I mean? And so this is why Thoth is the one that came up with the languages, the thoughts, as it says, and all these kind of things. But that was the jackal. The Dogon know that, hey, the Thoth was the jackal. And as it says here, see the jackal, the jackal was actually, the Nomo tried to terminate the jackal. And the jackal escaped even and became a part of this world. When we say the king, in this world, even in Freemason, when they're talking about the old king, that's the jackal. Okay, so that's just how much this symbolism is replete. Some just call it a jack. Like when you have some jacks as a toy, those are pentagrams. When we call them the Union Jack, you see what I mean? All of these terms they're right in front of your face, but you gotta well, who is that jackal? It's Anubis. But it makes up the entire spiritual tradition, like Isis, Osiris, Jesus, all these are the same words. A J is a Y, is a I, is a J. So this is where language plays the role, because language is like, we get fooled by all this stuff because we don't necessarily know what the words mean. So what I'm introducing here is like, okay, so a good step one would be is like, yo, slow down for a moment in life and create the empirical encyclopedia. That's kind of like, you're just looking at kind of like some of the editing that we're doing here, but I wanted to pull something up. This should be out, I would say, like we got about 2 more months, but then we level the playing field. So at this point, nobody should really be disagreeing. If you want to know about something, you could go and you can find that knowledge. Another thing that I wanted to mention here really briefly is, just in relation to the children. And I'm going to just turn this on real quick and play this on, I'm going to play it on, let me turn it down. Give me 1 second. Let's try it that way. Whoa. I see I'm spiking over there. Okay, can you hear me over there, Rich?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so I'm just showing this on the screen so yes, the talk is great. Like hopefully I'm not being, this is not so loud that it's moving me out, or maybe you're not hearing anything at all. But the talk is great. But the reality to all this is that if we're not really making those moves with the youth, especially with the rest of the world, let me just pause this for a minute. Man, that's crazy. It looks like my sound is just peaking.
We only hear you. I only hear you. I don't hear the video. I'm only hearing you.
Okay, great. I'm glad that okay, so you're just seeing it. Okay, so good. Yeah. Let's just leave it like that. But what I was showing is that we're moving in the community. And this means that still while we're getting this together, like we're trying to, get stabilized, get the sovereignty back together, AI is now here, right? Jobs is now being completely replaced. DEI is gone. They attacking the community directly with saying, hey, we're removing for, our Hispanics brothers and sisters, for, our Black brothers and sisters, and anybody else, you know what I mean? Because they eventually just moving down the line. It's like, hey, we're changing the whole thing and good luck, basically. So in that's when we have to move in with the stabilization. Like, yo, this is why I was saying we needed to get sovereign, because while everybody was sitting back complaining, asking for reparation, they had no intentions of giving anything. They don't even feel like that we deserve it. Who do you think you're talking to? This idea of like having these rights, if you may, and that they have to, all that kind of stuff is just the fictitious stuff that they built up, right? So the most important thing is like, if you still have an opportunity to make moves and do things, you better do it now, right? Like now is the time. Before, they would beat a cat to death for talking about he was going to be a part of something else beside the king who was God. Right. You see what I mean? You would be out of here. Or, you was talking about going and starting your own business. If you was even talking about reading.
Ain't that something?
They gouge the eyes out. You see what I mean? So here it is now. We have it all. But what are cats really doing? You know what I'm saying? No, we're talking about somebody else. We ain't talking about ourselves. But I'm just saying, like, what are we really doing with it? We're still scrambling, right? Because there's been operations. There's been intelligence agencies that have been playing around with our brains, playing around with our food, playing around with our psyche. So this means that when we come in to stabilize, like we got to put in like a shelf or foundation right away. And as I was showing with the video chess and community, which is also in Atlanta, when I caught the wave of the AI coming through, it was the same feeling that I felt when the crypto in 2017, when I came in, was coming through. I knew it's a feeling on things. Why everybody else like, yo, that's the devil. And then watch it go from 5 to now 116,000, as I was mentioning to you earlier. And then, now a lot of folks that stopped messing with me because I was saying, hey, crypto they calling me now, telling me about crypto as if they were the ones that were telling me about crypto. I'm like, yo, I told y'all about crypto, but what is that? That is the bank. And I'm showing just some stuff here, just, as we wind down. Look at this. So when we deployed WealthyBot, like we're going out into WealthyBot 2.0. This is going to deploy in 1 week. But 1.0 was already live. We let folks come in, we built a system, and the system does the trading for the person. Because the issue was when you get in there and you start playing around with the markets, your emotions is in there too. When you start losing money, you start pulling the money out when it's low, you start buying when it's high. So we were like, yo, let's take the thinking out of this and then let the system make the money. And it was like, set it and forget it. Anybody who used it made money, because over time, this is a constant trend. It's just designed properly. You see what I mean? So I'm going down the list technically of saying, listen, when we said, hey, we need spiritual sovereignty, we immediately went in and created the platform and the schooling and the teaching for spiritual sovereignty. When we knew, okay, they got us on the money thing, but there's a new money coming through, we was like, yo, and we did the best. It wasn't just like somebody putting some Excel together on a damn website and then throw it out. We really was in there like designing and building this stuff. And then the people were still over there trying to figure out who was the best one with the best clothes on. You see what I mean? Yeah. But this still took time and energy. When the AI moved in, we knew it was going to be big because it has to do with language. So we deployed the first spiritual AI and also put it in iOS and Android and polished it. Meaning that this wasn't like, again, it's not like, yo, this is almost done, or, we're trying to raise the money to complete. I was bootstrapping this. I was up 16 hours a day delivering the message, doing all types of different things with different industries or whatever, just to bring the resources back and then build the things that I knew that the community needed to sustain us through the future. And as I said, the bigger part of that is when we start thinking about the children and do they really know about this? So while the parents was out there like, yo, this AI thing, I feel like it's, not going to work out for everybody, or they shouldn't be focusing on that right now. Again, I'm showing here, we were linking up in Africa, in Nigeria, with chess masters and kids in Africa, getting them visas to come over here into Atlanta and in Athens and link up with the inner city youth there that were underserved, and then bringing them all together for, some real stuff. You see what I mean? Like when we knew that the AI was going to hit and it was going to hit everybody by storm, we started already taking it to another level and basically teaching the kids about how to use AI, teaching the kids about how to code. Even NASA, we have a sister work over at NASA. NASA came in and listened to the business plans of the kids of what they said as their program, what they were, if we went to Mars, what they would create, what kind of businesses what they would create. You see what I mean? And had them there listening to these youth who are brilliant. But we having parents, everybody come down on every single point. Yo, they wearing masks. They wouldn't even let you in the building if you weren't wearing masks, but we still deployed. Yo, they over there teaching, they should be learning. It's like these kids, it's like even trying, everybody that has a child knows right now how difficult it is to raise children. But yet, when you give them something that they know is a part of their future, really, not trying to give them sandals and trying to take them back to 3,000 years ago, with a hard head, you see what I mean? This was making it shake. And I'm saying that, listen, we got more coming, like as my brother said, that we're going to deploy something. We're going to teach people. We're going to come in with a workshop together. We're building on it now. I'm talking to Red Pill. We'll get on the phone tomorrow and really building on what we can do to, again, put in that stabilization, why things seem so shaky, right? But I'll tell you this, when we yin, we yang. And what that means is that just as much as you see the crazy stuff happening in the Matrix right now, there's something incredible. Also, there's a powder keg. This is what I like to call it. It's a powder keg of so much power and energy virtually untapped. And then when you think about, it's like a resource. And let's get into that last part about how can we enrich ourselves. So when you get into this untapped resource. Okay, so some people think, oh shit, they got the weapons, they controlling the media. All these people, they don't even know what's going on. They don't know the conspiracy, and nor can they learn it like right away. They just whipping them around. What's going to happen? And they think, hey man, all is lost. They're dealing with physical powers in every way. They like to cut, stab, and all this kind of anything, cheat, lie, all those kind of physical powers. But we have spiritual powers. In the moment that we tune into them and not every other thing else that we keep thinking is somehow in our favor. If it was in our favor, it would talk. When you said to make something happen, it would make it happen. It will make it manifest. But notice how it be you doing it until you get in there and do it. So here's what I wanted to bring in conclusion to this. It's like how to enrich yourself. Let me get some water here because I'm almost like foaming at the mouth over here. I'm like, dude, we hot, like it was gas. The gas was burnt. Listen. Yeah.
Shout out to everybody in the chat.
Yourself? So this is where we almost like drove completely by the solution. We're in this body because this body is flesh. It was a marriage between the flesh and the spirit. It's called divine matrimony. So while a lot of folks be trying to get real spiritual and just leave their body, they don't understand the body actually has a transition point to it too. So when you even leave here, the body also leaves too. It goes into its next transition and you continue on with your journey. It's a vehicle. So if you would invest more into the vehicle, then you can enrich yourself. So watch this. Since now we've already figured out that we're all cosmoses, we're all planets. We're all universes, the chakras and all that, circadian rhythms and everything, sushumna, nadis, every single thing is wired in, nerve systems, all that kind of stuff is wired in, electrons and all that stuff is going on, is popping. If I went to your world, would your world be destitute? Like if I tried to mine in your world, would I find even gold? Would I find amethysts? I want you to physically think about yourself, because really stress has been depleting all of our resources. Worship, which means war, it's a warship. Like they're telling you, yo, we in battle. That depletes a lot of your energy. Do you know how much energy it takes to be worried and to be stressed? It's a constant frequency on, and it's mostly acidic. And because we like alkaline, this thing immediately drains all our alkaline, like it's like a battery. We're just there drained, right? Thinking about all the stress.
Right.
So this allows you to realize, like back in the day, we could never walk into an alchemist's workshop and he would have like 100 different vitamins on the shelf. Generally, we got like, I got what you're working with. Maybe somebody could make the mufkuts, but probably not. Meaning that you never really had a time where, like, there's a company called Thorne. They make the best vitamins. They have row after row of vitamins. So you literally are looking at resources that you could embed within your body to allow your body to be enriched. Okay? Like one of the things I'm gonna tell you is, like, if you were taking your vitamin D's with your vitamin K2, with your magnesium, with your zinc, it's only a short list. I've already put out this list before. If you want it, just hit us up. We'll give you the list. But with those things, you'll find yourself more stronger in the dream. This was one of the biggest fascinations to me. I became more stronger in the dream by taking my vitamins. Now, I've always been this person, right? It's like, yo, I'm good. I don't need any other. I only get sick once a year. This is kind of the mindset. We rather spend a bunch of money on whatever instead of buying a countertop of different vitamins and like, yo, I'm gonna put in this, I'm gonna put in this. Every day I'm gonna take one of these and I'm gonna take my levels and start pushing my levels up. We like to wait till we get deficient. I need to go and get a blood test so I can see what I'm deficient in. Mm-hmm. When you could be going right to the alchemical shelf, like they got copper bisglycinate. Oh, man, goodness. I'm telling you, a Nubian may kill you over copper bisglycinate if he could find it right now, meaning that you literally have the element that literally ran the melanated species in the most assimilable form, just sitting there on the shelf. And so you see what I'm getting at here? It's like things, they advanced, but we didn't. It's like we kind of missed some of the connections, and I'm here to put those connections back together. Like, so if I came to your world and if I looked inside of you, would I see crystal caves, or would I see like carbon, mortality, stank? What kind of world would I live in? Because see, that's the world that you're living in. This here is where we're at. If I close this, yours doesn't close. I close my eyes, yours don't close. So the only real world is the one that I'm actually living in. And if I know that if I can enrich this, it then controls how I perceive everything else. This is why somebody low on the vitamins, they even get depressed. The depression is like the number one thing of the vitamin deficiency. And mind you, none of the stuff that you see out there is the whole package. You literally have to spend time with yourself and find the things that you need. Somebody like, yo, I'm on the CMOS. It's like, yo, man, there's more than CMOS. I'm on the Shilajit. There's more than Shilajit. You really have to go in on yourself and say, but am I getting my vitamin Ds? So that's one of the big connections that I wanted to just make here tonight, is that the real application to the power is actually going in on yourself through the body, and not looking at everybody else and be like, well, I don't know, Sevan, because if it was vitamins that was really going to take me to the next level, that means that all them folks that be taking the vitamins will be on the next level. Don't think that way. Here's what you need to know. There is a small percentage of people that can put aether into the equation. This is the dodec. Aether is spirit. It fuses all of these other platonic solids, the building blocks of the matrix from a molecular level, right? It fuses all of these together. So what this means is that it doesn't matter for somebody could know chemistry, right? Like I knew a girl, she had been 8 years in school dealing with eventually being able to prescribe medicines, but she knew what every single ingredient meant on the back of some of the medicine bottles, you know, the long ingredients. She knew what all of that meant, but she didn't know what the pineal gland was. She was missing this. And this is what universities and schools of mastery do. They remove the spiritual component, so the person never realizes that the actual knowledge that they have could give them damn near regeneration, immortality, high levels of all types of stuff, but they're not tapped in spiritually. And then when any type of spiritual foundation they have is the religion or the church. You see what I mean? So they're not able to put the rest together. Lastly, crystals. We talked about it before, but I have literally witnessed in having a breastplate of crystals, the crystals consistently take me to a specific world every time that I wear them. That set of crystals. So there's a lot of exploration still is what I'm saying. I haven't figured it all out. I got a big chunk, but that's why I try to give this freely, because I know that the next generation and those that are even on the line now that are coming, they're the ones that may take a unique, specific intention or interest into one of these things. Say, you know what, that's interesting. I'm gonna start like really studying my body, and you'll find out, like I'll give you the list if you want it, but you'll find out that there's like really 4 or 5 things. And from those 5 things, our body can build everything else. But without them, you know what I mean? We're like on that crutch. And then in the world, you know, you're experiencing that, then your money is all kind of crazy because your energy in your body, your real current, which is of course the real currency, that's all, you know, so all of those things would be the reason why some individuals in this world will go through this whole experience and never see the miracle that they are in this. You see what I mean? So and even just kind of tapering off there, if we want to open it up for question and answer, but it's like when you're wealthy and when you're enriched, your eyes are open. And you realize that the only adversarial forces are trying to divide you from all there truly is. And holding, again, any animosities. This was one of the last things that I learned. Well, actually, it was the first thing that I learned. When I saw the language and how many different phonetic switches, that's what it's called. It's like when you think the word means one thing, but it really means another, especially on the occult level, most of the time opposite. There were so many phonetic switches in the language. I had compassion again for everybody that was going through this experience, because the language alone was enough to throw a person off from who they really are. And that meant that the people who were in tune, they were like, even on the, you see what I mean? Like if the language enough, and it took a lot of people out, but if the language enough was alone was enough, imagine the people who are still doing great things despite their awareness of even what's going on in the language. So I don't have nothing but congratulations, especially these days, for everybody who has made it through. You see what I mean? And so, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, you know, just deliver that today, man, you know.
Yeah. Now I got one more question before we get to a couple of questions from the people in the chat before we get out of here. Sevan, you talked about a couple of things during this conversation. You talked about a little earlier, you talked about being involved in certain societies. We talked about all this information that is here right now and how serious it was in the past, and how you talked about they would get God gauge your eyes out just for trying to read and stuff like that. You know, if we're talking about the ethers and this invisible field that's sort of like a bridge that connects everything and it also holds everything together in this realm, there's invisible ingredients, or like there's these invisible ingredients with everything. So let's say cooking, let's say a certain woman cooks and she uses the exact recipe, Sevan, as 10 other women, but this woman's food tastes immaculate and everybody comes to her. There's this invisible energy surrounding her food that draws people there. So what I want to ask you is that the information that we're getting on YouTube, does it lack that invisible energy that maybe a secret society may have? Maybe if I read a book, let's say, let me just show you a book. Let's say I always got this book. Let's say I got this book, the I Am Discourses, and I got it from a society that I'm a part of, and it affects me so much. It's absolutely, I mean, my consciousness just went through the roof. But then I get this book from somebody on YouTube, and it doesn't have no effect on me. Is that because YouTube and information we're getting on the internet, it lacks this energy that Big Mama has, that love ingredient that Big Mama had, or that certain things have, this invisible force that they have? Is YouTube like devoid of this force, Sevan? And that's why we're not benefiting from the information the way we should.
I don't think that's the case. I'll put it this way. I like to look at this term psycho-spiritual, okay? Because also a lot of this stuff that we're going through is psychological.
Right.
It's like there's a big psychological component to this. And one of the things that I examine within the religion is what their claim to fame is really, what their true power is the ability to allow a person to feel like that they can shift the gear, that they can start over, that they can change. Like the baptism says, hey, from here on, you're born again, you're clean. You're given a new tribe. You're given a new group of people to be with, a fellowship. See what I mean? So those components and a few others are the ones that really, for a person who is psychologically also needing to make the transformation, it allows them to do that because they accredit so much power to those things. Right. Okay. So if we're on something like this, a lot of like YouTube, let's say, that's really then based on the person, right? So that same charisma, if you may, or that same kinetic attraction, if a person has it, they can send it really through anything because there is no space, right? That like there's a non-local thing to all of this. So you can touch a person through the vibration and the frequency of just riding on the vibration and frequency, right? Now, true, there's some step downs that happen, like right away, everything's been digitized, right? We're not physically around each other. You can never replace, let's say, a physical connection with a virtual connection as far as the strength of that connection. So there are some things that are lost there, but we also have the ability to patch up and replace those things. It all just becomes about like how much we're really into it. And that's everything. Like sometimes in life, the reason why we can't accomplish what we want to accomplish is because we don't have enough motivation to accomplish it. There needs, like I said, there always needs to be a fire going on, but there is one now. This is the thing. We don't got to look for one. They're literally burning down the reality. It's cooked, as they love to say. And so it's either, it's like a skate or die. It's like either we wake up to what's going on or we're going to keep losing. Let me put this way, because something like, or we may lose. No. Even a lot of these situations we're seeing in the world, like I said, we'll just use the Gaza because it's the most pronounced one right now. This is a horrible loss. Yeah. I wouldn't wish this type of thing on anybody. You see what I mean? We should have progressed further by now. So yes. Now we look to these avatars, right? The beings that they feel the spiritual connection. When they breathe, they feel something weird going on in their body. You see what I mean? So something's going on, but now we need to take that Kundalini to that complete transition. It needs to go from technically what would be seen as a worm or a small snake to a dragon, then to a bird, which is the evolutionary process of the species. That's why you saw, you get the reptile, and it's so like, that's what I'm saying. A lot of this is so blatant. It's almost like, see, the crystals, that's why I say that there's some stuff I read, and it was like explaining how we've built so many different things in this world, all these different, technologies, yet our ancient ancestors pull up with one crystal and boot up the whole reality. And some people are trying to figure out like, why? How could a crystal have so much power? Look, if it can hold data, which you see it can, you got it in your computer, you got a crystal holding data, just silicone, just one of them. Holding all that data, right? And then that natural procession, like you see like the insects in trees, right? Like you'll see the stick bug, right? And you see just how connected they are. But then you got all types of liquids and juices and stuff in the trees that heal, kill, do all types of stuff with the body, right? So you have an entire cabinet of exploration. You've got the psychogenic plants. You see what I mean? But then if we just focus in on the reptile, when the reptile evolved, and you're looking at it, 150 million years in the paint, finally to become a bird, you literally go from living in a hole consciously, because remember, all this is spiritual. These physical analogs, that's all it really is. So you go from living in a hole underneath, as we call it, it's the nether region, the rivers. Underneath the world is all water. These regions, these realms are all underwater. This is what the Africans know. You go into the water to contact these entities, including Saturn. You will never separate many of these entities from the world because they are burrowed into the center of the world. Like they're in the womb of their mother. They see this whole thing as an egg, and they're ruling from the egg. You see what I mean? So this is the level of consciousness that is available and has been reached. And then there's you. And it's like, yo, do you want to go to that level? Because anything that you can conceive, you can get to. So somebody has to kind of lay out the path. Like, that's why I don't like dealing with, like, if I can't prove it, if I can't show you it. Like, that's why you have etymology. You have historical things. You have the connections within the language, what we call the artifact. It's like the alien, if you may, quote unquote, left its fingerprints all in the language. The language is actually telling you really something and dictating a certain message. That's another conversation. But reptile to bird, you see it right here. That's on the pharaoh. He's got the bird and he's got the snake. That's the mastery of Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, if you may, the underworld and the upper regions, or the air. Now, the other thing is that some may think, okay, once I get to the air, that means I'm good, because they're still on the good, bad thing. When really the prince of the air is causing the most issues right now in the matrix. The popes own the air, if you may. They have the weights and measures of the space in the air using certain nautical tools and claiming that space. So they call themselves the rulers of the air. That is their region, right? The Skeksis, like you would see with the dark crystal, the birdmen, Thunderbird. You see what I mean? They eat even humans, right? So we're just not saying, hey, there's not like a good and bad here. There's a transition. And then finally you get the human, which is a full stack. We literally have the tree. Like there was this old dude, I wonder if he's still alive. He used to be over there at little 5 points, in Seven Nanda, was shouts out. And he would tell you, yo, I think we all come from trees. And he would sit there and tell you about all this if you was willing to listen. You see what I mean? So that historical, I got pineal gland crystals sitting in my head. I know I came from the ocean, from the ancestor Jimaya and all the mermaid goddesses and the goddesses of the water, right? And then the insects, that's just, I like to call that inside secular. Like those are the times where, you spend your deepest building, just really in that, like a beetle. You see what I mean? You on just that solo mission. And then the trees, right? And then the reptiles, and then the birds, and then you roll all that together, and now you're living, walking, talking. And the only thing that you also sometimes have to realize is that, look, only like a few thousand years ago, there was no other religion besides serpent worship. It was that deep. The reptiles, if you may, had that much dominion over the planet that all the gods, everybody knew all the gods were reptiles. You see what I mean? And that still exists in most teachings and most systems today. And then, like I said, so when you look at that and you say, man, this has been a work in progress. Now we're sitting here, we're humans now, and we're full stack. We literally have all of this within us. Now, what are we going to do with this? So there's no way we should be sitting here feeling like, yo, Donald Trump and blah, blah. It's like, man, what are you even talking about? Immortalis. Like you're a being that will reanimate yourself, even if you perish from this and reboot from another place that you just left off. You see what I mean? That's just the stuff that's out of our visual. And that's what I'm saying. This life should be the final life. You should make that commitment to yourself. Make this life the final life, that you come in like a baby, that you come in not really knowing what you are.
Right.
And that experience, just like Delbert Blair say, that experience only needs to happen really once. See, a lot of people think, well, no, I got a past life. No, what you have is DNA. This is your first time here. Your specific signature is unique. You have, for sure, your ancestors in your DNA. And when you get regressed, You will go into their existences and lives, but that's not completely you in that way. You have this path, this one right here. This one is yours. This is the gift. It's been wrapped up in a package. Like I said, it's like a gift in a box. It's been wrapped up. A surprise. You see what I mean? A surface. All those words, sir, it means a snake. Hello, sir. Yes, sir. Sir is a snake. Sir, sar, sorcerers worship snake. You see what I mean? Who is that snake? It's a cobra. You see what I mean? And who is that cobra? It's like it's entertainment. It's like a there's different symbolisms. There's a Theban or a thief, a cobra or a taker. You see what I mean? In entertainment, or a DJ, they call it a Jed, right? Which is a pillar that will rise. You see what I mean? So all of those symbols are equating to letting you understand, like, hey, that's a part of your body. That's the male's masculine. That's the masculine male's generative component, is the God of this world. You see what I mean? Like when we're talking about the king, it's a phallic symbol. You see what I mean? And that's why in the ancient books they say, hey, your ancestors are actually the genitalia. If you ever really saw them physically, that's what they would more of appear like, right? So I feel like the world can use some of these mysteries because that's refreshing to the current narrative.
Indeed. No, yeah, definitely. Let's get to we about to hit the 2 hour mark, so I'm gonna take a couple of questions from the family before we get out of here. Seven, man, before we get to these questions, I'm excited, man, about this announcement we about to make, man. I'm super excited. Oh man, this idea I had. I can't wait to chop it up with you in the morning about, man. Yo, we got something real. The world is changing, y'all. Oh, y'all got to get on board. This world is changing so fast, family. So just stay tuned. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Let's get a couple of questions before we get out of here. I know I seen a little earlier, Seven. I seen people talk. Oh, yeah, here we go. The list of vitamins. I done seen about 5 people write that in the chat. You had mentioned the vitamins. You had mentioned a little earlier.
I would tell them to dial in either through support or hit us up in Discord, because it's like a copy paste,
right?
Rather than going through them, because we wanted to condense this list, because of course you can have a lot of different vitamins, but there are things that if you take them, they don't have effect unless you have the other thing. Like if you take in vitamin D, but you don't have vitamin K2, it can't even process the vitamin D. Especially for melanated people, they are naturally vitamin D deficient because we have a block towards the sun, which gives vitamin D. You see what I mean? Yeah. So that has a lot to do with a lot of stuff. Depression, anti-inflammatory, mainly depression. Vitamin D is king on that. So definitely get with us in Discord or in one of those spaces so somebody can just give you that list and you can have all the things. And then that way you can kind of choose, because how it's set up is like, this is what you need. You have to have the calcium, magnesium, and zinc. Right. But then, you should for sure have the vitamin D and the vitamin K2 together. You see what I mean? And then now if you want to get fancy, you definitely should start off with copper bisglycinate. Right. And then like change up your get another magnesium citrate. You may throw in then some creatine and then some hydrolyzed collagen. You see what I mean? So I'll put a new, and that's like, boom, now we bodybuilding now for real, and we're spirit building. The body has everything that it needs. The kids have everything that they need, but the food, definitely, it's not going to come from the food. So you got to make that move yourself.
All right, let's get to some of these questions. Some more. All right, they want to know. Miss Mahogany wants to know, how do you feel about destiny and fate?
How do I feel like destiny? What do I feel about destiny and fate today?
No, how do you feel about destiny?
I'm saying, like, how do I feel about it today? Because I go back and forth, and that's literally why destiny and fate, because there's always another. You know what I mean? Like everything here that you can think of, wherever there's an antithesis, right? So there's one aspect of this where there is something that, let's say that it is written. Okay, that term, like a manual for your body, what I found out personally that is that the archetypes are so real. Just like, what's his name? Lord Byron. Is that the brother that you have come in that talks about the numbers?
Lord Strayhorn.
Lord Strayhorn. Okay, excuse me.
Lord Strayhorn.
So, exactly. So this system is thousands of years old, this numerology system. And they say that it actually came from Venus, meaning the entity Venus came and gave instructions about how the body runs. And this started detailing things about how the archetypes, which are really the organs, who are also the archons, they are also the planetary systems. They basically are inside of many of the species. Mm-hmm. And because of that, what each organ does is like what each planet does. That's why you have positive traits of the planet and negative traits of the planet. And then you're sitting there as the arbitrator trying to push the planet more into balance. Okay. And so in this process, though, because there's like a I Ching kind of yin yang effect, this means that this is like such a defined path that you can watch a person and immediately be like, oh, that's a number 8. You see what I mean? So this is what's also meant by moving in mysterious ways, because if you then stay like within that predictable cycle of your archetype, you haven't accomplished what the ancestors called crossing the hebdomad, meaning to cross over all the characters, which are also the chakras. Remember, the organs are the chakras, to fuse them all together, boom, to make a unique being. Because once you like put all of them together along with your, what your unique spark is, it creates like a unique form. In this form, everything that it does is new. So in that state, you have become what the sun is, which is not a male. This is how the trickery in the words. It's like a sun is a boy, right? So then we're to assume that the moon is a female. And at this point, everybody's all screwed up. Any dynamo needs a positive and a negative and a neutral, right? So when we're saying that you become a sun, it means that you actually have now reached the zenith of your consciousness, which sits really in the center of your body. So you notice how a lot of times we would think that this is the top, when really we're more of like this stretched back like a pyramid, and the top is really our generative component pointing towards the sky. You see what I mean? And in this state, if you may, one is able to then achieve like a consistent, like what you see with the sun, is reborn every day. Notice how, and let me show you how there's lots of evidence of this. Every time you dream, generally it's a different dream. For sure, we've entered back into to dreams before. I used to have it even so precise. I could get up, go use the restroom, come back. As long as I kept thinking about where I left off on the dream, it would pick up from there.
That's crazy. I know.
Right? Especially when I was younger. When I was younger, it worked really well. Later on, not so well. But you could pick up on that strain. But generally, every time you come into a dream, it's a new world. And you know the people. You know what I mean? You got a whole scenario going on that you feel like you're familiar with, but it's forever in a day. You see what I mean? So that kind of newness is not moving down the same path that destiny is moving down. Destiny is more of like what you would call instinct. It's the natural process of a person going through what would seem like a recycle, because they basically go through the experience. They turn one ring, if you may. You get like, maybe you get a ring, if you may. And then now it's time to move on either to another chakra, or you're going to repeat that chakra again. Masters consistently come into the same chakra over and over until they master it. And then they move on to another chakra. So there's less of an idea like, yo, I'm going right to the pineal gland, because they know, yo, if you go to the pineal gland, but you haven't mastered the root chakra, it ain't gonna go. But there are beings that have done that, and they're here too. Mm-hmm. And this is why in the divided plane, there are all these characters. And this is what I was saying in the beginning, is that this is a movie. And you choose your character. But also when you choose that character, everything that comes with that character is going to be what you inherit. And this is why they would call it the secret, the law of attraction, that if you start thinking about that, yo, I'm wealthy, you start attracting that, because it works relatively that way. Like if you start thinking you're a certain type of person, the things that belong to that person. Like if they need a certain color, if they need a certain kind of car, if they need a certain kind of people around them, that's going to start pulling into them by just the simple law of resonance. This is facts. So what people started realizing, of course, the masters realize is that, well, what are the resonators for certain things then? And they just start grabbing the resonators. And this is why we have like charts in the genealogy where we show, hey, in this path, here's the tree, here's the crystal, here's the color, then we go down, here's the temperament, which is like how their attitude, their temperature is. You see what I mean? So all of that is there. And so with that, you can read a person of almost like 70, 80% of what they really have going on, some even more. But then there'll be others, you're constantly wrong. Like you be like, yo, he's this, or you're trying to predict. And it's just like, you can't really peg them. And this is because they're moving in what I call the mysterious ways. And they've started really braiding higher levels of intelligence. They get it. They understand what's going on. They get the play. Now the joke is not on them anymore. You see what I mean? They realize even why they said, hey, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. That's Aleister Crowley. What is he saying? It's not his statement initially. What it's saying is that in the depth of occult, what they found out is that you could do what you want. There was no real rules. The more that you did what you want, it meant that you were living more into the character that you were chosen to be. So this is their dogma. This is their theism. Okay, so you should just go with all those passions because they're going to lead you eventually to where you're supposed to be. And in that way, they're not wrong, but they're not giving you the whole story either. Like if you steal, right, and you kill, there's going to be a reflux current that's going to hit. And because that's a territory, that's a region. So what comes with that is now going to be your bedfellows, if you may. You see what I mean? So choose the higher roles. So they set out the lower roles, which they call the lower Goetia, the lesser keys, right? The lesser keys of Solomon, the shells. So they initiate with the shells, and this is the spiritual systems, the lower energies, and they give everybody the lower role. You janitor, you clean up the pyramid floor. You see what I mean? Versus the highest roles are really available to you, but you have to move beyond the construct.
Man, you dropped it on that one, man. Woo! That was fun.
I'm just getting really warmed up. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm getting older, man, to train, you know, I'm like, you know, because imagine again, when you're holding so much levels of awareness,
oh, man.
The main thing you be trying to figure out is how we going to unpack this? Where are we going to go? We can't go everywhere.
Yeah. Let's keep this thing going. I don't understand your question, Stay Wild. She said 7. What are the 4 things? Did I miss something? What is she? What are you talking? Because I appreciate the donation. I don't know what you're talking about, Stay Wild. So let me know in the chat what 4 things are you talking about that you asked at 7, so I could re-ask your question. Let's get to another question. I've seen this question a couple of times from this sister. She says, will you explain why the birds are chirping so much in the evening and at night now?
That's funny because my wife the other day was like, yo, the birds were making a lot of noise this morning. It was different. So again, since this keeps coming up, esoterically, the noise of birds has always been known to be that of messengers. And so if we're seeing more and more, this means that messages and communications is trying to come through more, like an urgency kind of thing. And I've been experiencing that on different levels, not like see, when you know you're not going to die, it relieves a lot of pressure. You know what I mean? Like the idea people have of death is really what comes with division. Like the whole die thing would be that the concept that you separate from your body, thus you're like dice, you've separated into 2 things. Yeah. But what we've come to learn, especially when you reach your sovereignty state, is that you actually don't divide. You actually continue to connect and join. So everything that you've perceived to lose, you gain back in the next cycle. You see what I mean? So in that way, it's kind of difficult for me to interpret, you know, ideas around the fears around death. And so, yeah, I may have skipped the question entirely, but yeah.
Oh, indeed. Let's get to another question. Can you, Rasha Mel wants to know, can you explain more about the 0 and 1 reality?
The 0 and the 1 concept is simply the pole and the whole. Any kind of dualistic components that you see within the reality can be encompassed within those two symbols, a curve and a straight line. It's just like even what you see with the dollar sign. It's a curve and then a straight line. Anytime you get or 0 and then a 1 slash in between you, anytime you see that symbolism, it's the sign that the two opposing forces, the horizontals and the vertical, are now intersecting, and thus birth, creation, life, regeneration, etc., can come from that. You see what I mean? And that's why it comes in the most basic point as our generative components. The Shiva, the lingam, the Shiva lingam, and the phallus symbol, right? The Shiva lingam, which is the phallus symbol, and the yoni. You see what I mean? So it takes those two components to be able to circumscribe a reality. So you'll see this like consistent symbolism on all levels in relation to bringing dual components together, which is why, still, if we got beef, whatever it is, with a species, a race, an entity, a reptile, whatever it is, it just means that you still haven't reached completely the stage that you need to be. Yeah, I mean, we're not giving them a pass for any of the atrocities and things going on. If you want to sit and play judge, that's not what we're doing. But to stay in the mind of division allows you to be in the realm of the divided one. The whole of what you would say is distorted magic is to divide a person from something, whether it's to end their marriage, to divert their thoughts and their thinking from where they're at to something else, to maybe what you want it to be. There's many of these books. Some of these books are like $40,000 where they have entities, mostly Zaren, Zars, or Jinn, DJ, Zen, Jinn, as I said, and these type of entities that their job is to create dissension. That's how they operate. So they move like thoughts in the mind, because that's the channel that they speak on. They speak telepathically like a frequency, and all they need you to do is tune in. And it's really easy to tune in when division is present. When there's an argument or something happening, they can move right in. So a lot of times I start looking at it this way. In many ways, you're not just dating one person, or it's not just two of you. It may be four of you there. So try to get that going on with a relationship, meaning that sometimes when you're even talking to a person, you're also dealing with them, their analog, and maybe a couple other riders or things that they also have playing around within their consciousness. And so you have to approach things sometimes that way. It's like just more on your wisdom. You see what I mean? So that's the definition of those two forces, is how to bring those forces together. And when you do that, that's always a symbol of power. That's always a symbol of regeneration. For instance, the man and the woman don't come together, they won't be life, but they're opposites. Okay? The battery contains a positive and negative pole. Without them, it cannot give any kind of charge. So that negative is not there as evil. Like, how are we gonna look at the negative pole in the battery like, yo, he's evil? You see what I mean? So there's a difference between evil and what we're calling positive and what we're calling negative. Those are some of like my own old courses. And then your job is pretty much as the arbitrator to bring those two conflicting forces together. This is to bring the left and the right hemispheres together. They call these the two thieves on the cross, because the corpus callosum and all that back here is Jesus, if you may. It's even shaped like it. It looks like the superior brachium, as it's called. Then on each side of the brain, it's two hemispheres. So they think totally different. There's endless difference between left and right hemisphere, right? And then you should be sitting in the center in the corpus callosum, in the seat, like the alien on Men in Black, right? Steering the consciousness rather than letting the consciousness steer you. When it's steering you, it's like a devil and an angel on the shoulder. Both of these are no good. So if you're like, well, no, the angel's the good one. No. You don't understand. Inside of these realities, it's like everything is like a yin and yang, different frequency, different color, or, this one, that one, positive, negative. And all that is the game of division. And so when you jump into it like, yo, that's the good one, you start losing where to draw the line. And also you start even blaming yourself and getting all on yourself. That's why a lot of these religions are structured around, you're a wretch. Somebody call you a wretch in the street, you want to fight. But you jump into religion, you're a wretch. You're always a servant. We should make sure that we understand that. When I read a lot of these ancient books where I found the names of the gods that people worship today, the gods were very clear that, yo, you're my servant. You even see that in the Bible now. But let's imagine and try to bring it into the context of today. If, I don't know, name your best star, your actor, said, hey, you're going to come and I'll let you come and work for me. You can work for you, but you're going to work for free and you're going to do whatever I tell you to do. A lot of people will be like, okay, just to be around you, right, you can do whatever you want to me.
Right.
Some people think that that's so far from what really goes on. You see what I mean? So that's what, when spirits are seeking worship, that is actually their game, is like, look, you're my slave. You carry my stuff. You do what I tell you to do. I use you as a vehicle. And then also back in the day, people didn't necessarily expect to get anything back for that. This is a new concept of where you can tell an entity to get you some money. And you could tell an entity to give you some money for your car. Right. You see how crazy this sounds?
Yeah.
It was never like that. If you served the entity, you were its servant. And people did that en masse at times because it's almost like they were overwhelmed by these forces. Okay. This is why even Christianity came, is because it was a natural transition from us worshiping a serpent to the next thing that could be worship, but not completely turning everyone on to the real thing. You see what I mean? Like, think about this. So first, the serpent's being worshiped. Anything external that one is worshiping, the energy is going out. So now this is all in the land. It's everywhere. People got statues, totems, names, mantras, serpent kings, the whole nine. It's in full fledged. Next system comes, runs a sword right through it and says, no, we're not worshiping snakes no more. We're going to worship man. God then becomes a man, not a snake anymore. Now, all the old books, that God is actually a snake. But now we think, oh, this is Santa Claus. This is the bearded druid, Odin-looking God. And this is what's going on, when that's not what's happening. You see what I mean? But then the concept, like in the New Testament, which is the new testicles, the new birth, if you may, the next Genesis, now everybody worships the man. Now, in that culture, though, like this is the Na'ak culture. This is the Naga culture. This is Tupac Amaru. This is the Amaraka, the immortal serpent. This is Quetzalcoatl. This is Tetzalcoatl. That's what we're talking about. But they did take that and be like, Apollonius of Tyana took that from the Hindu Naga and then repurposed it. That picture of Jesus that you're seeing, that's Apollonius. Like, go look it up on the internet, right? So Apollonius cooked up the entire tradition, and then that became like, then people started worshiping a man rather than the risen serpent, right? Now, let's say, for instance, the natural progression would be, this is just trying to like see why we would even go through dogmatic systems like that. The natural progression would be, since we also worship the woman at a certain stage too, would be for people to realize to worship themselves would be the natural final state. You see what I mean? So now you've worshiped the snake, you've worshiped the woman, you've worshiped nature, you've been worshiping every damn thing, basically. Now you have to direct that force and that attention now onto yourself with everything that you've learned. And then realize that, hey, if any of that stuff had your best interest in mind, it's not going to be pissed off with you. It's not going to be angry with you. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to kill you, because you made the decision to turn that energy within and start allowing it to truly bud, to allow it to truly take on the course that it's supposed to take in this existence. And you're going to be the direct benefactor of that, not something else, right? Or not some idea even.
Indeed. I heard Bashar say something one time, Sevan. He was like, I don't know, you ever heard of Bashar? You know Daryl Anka, the dude that channels the entity, Bashar. Yeah. He said one time, he was like, Bashar said, because we were talking about gods and demons and stuff like that. He said that there's no such thing as demons. The only thing that exists is your demon. So it's like a projection from each person. And I guess if we're both seeing the same demon, I convinced you that this exists, so you bought into whatever I was trying to sell you, whatever perception of reality I was selling you. That's why we can see the same thing. It's because we're buying into the same perception of reality. But if we really look at it, there's no such thing as a demon, it's just your demon. What's your thoughts on that? And I hope I summed that up the right way, but what's your
For
thoughts?
sure. I mean, maybe we're using the same word to describe different things. Okay. Because like even the word demon is actually a pretty derogatory type of statement. It's like even like saying nigga or something like that to a spirit, because it doesn't really describe exactly what it is that you're talking about. And also it's said offensively, right?
Yeah.
When a daemon is a diamond is a piece of coal, and it's actually going through a transitional state and process, but it's still luminous, right? And so all the daemons themselves as a concept were basically disincarnates, meaning that they were entities in the process of basically in a process of transition. They didn't have bodies. Now, wicked demons are beings, which we have plenty, that have moved into that disincarnate state, still maybe waiting on a body if they get one again, which is a gift. That's what I keep saying. This body is a gift. So what happens is with the daemon or with people, you can't say everybody's balanced. We're not asking you necessarily to be good, but we're not asking you to be bad either. We're asking you to be balanced. And how many beings move on balanced? So what happens is that, let's talk about this on a spiritual level, is what you would call distorted. I like using this term. It's bad things that you do. It's not pushing things forward. They become congealed, meaning that they are actually, they form a collective. So while everybody's still seeing themselves as a separate person, and this kind of gets into what you're asking as a question, when we have like one kind of energy, that energy moves through all the people who are affected by that same inclination. So in effect, it's not just one person there, it's an entity or energy. Right? Some could call that an eidolon. There's thought forms, like they have different words for what these really are. You see what I mean? So when Bashar, which by the way, so as you mentioned, I've been in since the beginning. And another reason why, I wasn't as popular is because I was always quick to call bullshit, if you may. And this was because I felt that because we had so many people that operated still within these higher level spiritual traps, that we could not really go anywhere as the conscious community at large, because so many people had concentrated their energy around this person, even though the person was telling them that they actually were linked into entities that didn't have humanity's best interest in mind. Now, from a discernment level, this is easy to pick up. You don't even need to hear what the person's saying. You can see it within their being, right? But for others that may have not been through that ability to discern between, who's really honest and truthful, I had a hard time even accepting that people would lie about things, right? Until I ultimately confronted the liar. I had issues even understanding that people were interacting with other entities until I started realizing how many platforms, if you may, were infected with entities from Orion, meaning that these were a lot of the New Age Namaste groups. They had this direct connection going on with these different entities coming all out of Orion. And it's still happening. This is the Burning Man. This is the what do they call that? Tomorrowland. Like, these are like a lot of the owners of the companies, like a lot of these tech companies, all these people congregate, but there's an actual real spiritual force that is there dominating that through the music and through the hallucinogenic drugs. And so a lot of times, maybe we are not as interested in what is going on in reality and existence, but we're definitely interesting to a lot of these energies that are moving through. You see what I mean? Because it's almost like just in the essence of, in the ancient times, again, like you look at these books of the kings, the goal is to get as many people on your side or in your army as possible. So the spirits, they love that. They love to have as many underlings as possible. And that's always the dead ringer. Is it about you? Hence the term we call an inner stand. Is this power empowering you and about you? Or are we talking about somebody else? Is there like some entity that supposedly now the person's talking to this entity and they're like, yo, Sananwa is telling me to tell you. No. I need to know what that is, because believe it or not, we could find out. And that's what the names are. That's why they say, hey, if it could be named, it could be controlled. Name is an anagram for Amen, right? It's the hidden God. It is the God of the underworld, it is Amen, right? Or Amun, right? But this is a whole cult. This is super deep stuff. Like I said, they control languages, they control entities, they control jinn, they control quarine, which are analogs of human beings, which is the spirits that they congeal through their mind. You know what I mean? So this is when we talk about sorcery and spirituality. You know, I even just was looking at a published article on CNN where they were saying that Israel was using supernatural powers in this war. This is on the major news station. The people were complaining that talismans continue to fall into the villages and they have weird Hebraic writings on them, right? Another person be like, oh man, that stuff doesn't mean nothing, but you and I know what it means. You see what I mean? So also, I have text of them using jinn for espionage because people can't see jinn. So they don't know necessarily that jinn's right over there in the corner listening. Jinn goes back and reports to a rab mag or a rabbi. You see, so this is a very spiritually active world. And that 200,000 years, this is another thing, like that 200,000? Yeah, because, you know, we could kind of think back how far we've been, and then even 200,000 seems like a longer time than we even know we've been here, to be honest. But give it to us, 200,000, 300 million, man, you were young. And this is why they be whipping humans. Like, you know, like when somebody's running circles around you, this is why the genie is known to be the genius or intelligent in that way, because they blow humans' minds as far as how much they really know. But it's not about how much you really know. It's how much you feel. You see what I mean? That's why the serpent is the ruler of the world. And, you know, he knows everything about the world, but it's not about knowledge per se. It's about feeling. And so if I can feel my way into a new existence, I don't need language to do that.
Right.
I can discern through feeling, like I can know something's going on. You know what I mean? Because when you do crazy stuff, you wear it. It's in your body language. It's all over you. But it's just, that's why they say, hey, when people tell you about who they are, you should listen. You see what I mean? Because a lot of times we romanticize so much. That's why we're living in the Roman Empire. This is they romanticize the abuser. So, you know, it's like, and then they get us to do it. It's like, oh, well, you know, this sounds like, you know, it's just a big God, and then we're all down here and we're its children. This is romanticizing the scenario that's happening. You see what I mean? So, yeah.
Seven, the same way, you know, prayer is a big word in this realm, and people pray to all sorts of entities and angels and gods and beings. I want to ask you, in other realms, are entities, gods, beings, ancestors, are they praying to us? So the same way we pray to them, is it possible that there's people in other realms praying to us, hoping that we fulfill our mission in this realm to make things easier for them in their realm? And maybe that's why we get so much support when we fulfill our pursue our mission, you know?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but what I would say is, again, we're just talking about in the traditional context.
Yeah.
Like when we say prayer, what we're saying is that you're going to be hunted, because prey gets hunted. So what happens is when a person is entreating, like they're asking for something, what's really happening is the spirits of the air, that's where they live. So they're literally reading only thoughts. Like there's a language compartment in the mind. So this all translates into a frequency. And so they're seeing those. And then basically there's a brokering system that happens. This is what evangel, as it's called, or a demi, any of those kind of entities play the go-between between a man and a woman and what they're trying to accomplish. So they try to broker the deal. And this is why a lot of this gets into spiritual banking. And a lot of times people end up in heavy debt, and that debt carries on generations, which is called a generational curse. Okay. Because then what the person is doing is they're entreating. They're saying, listen, I need this accomplished, and here's what I have: a Fanta soda. And the entity's like, I can make that happen, but I'm gonna need a little bit more than the Fanta. And all of this is also going on beyond what, like, see, in this body, that's why we said there's a twin. The twin is the intercessor in the spiritual world, and that generally mostly happens in the dream. So all of our desires and all that stuff, all that as they clearly are, our fears and all that plays out in the dream. So again, when we're asking for something, because that's what I actually figured out was very effective, was praying, which I call honoring. It's the word on, right? Honoring, right? So you're turning it on. You're not offering or praying at an altar. You see what I mean? This is occultism, right? So I started realizing again that in the honorings, so your question was, hey, are beings praying to us?
Yeah.
All advanced beings are already aware of Anking, okay? Anking is the process of coming forth by day. That's the literal term. That's even the name of the building. And it just means that you've now been able to complete the entire sovereignty process. You can self-substantiate. So you don't you're a star now. You don't necessarily need energy or from anything because you generate your own energy. So again, anything that is needing something else finds itself in a very unfortunate position in this day and time because the original state is sovereign. This is called Amagi. In Sumerian, there's a term that means basically that when you come into this world, that's when the debts begin. And a lot of those are issued from the king. However, when you are not in this world or leave this world or in the mother's room, which is called the Amagi, it's the manumission. You have no debt because there is no system that uses debt in that space. You don't owe anything. You see what I mean? So just remember that. Like, so praying is asking for something. Now, some people say, like, well, so what do I do? Breathe. Because all of the things happen based on a storehouse of energy that's like a canister inside of your being. And the more that you breathe and the more that you enrich, the more that canister, like a thermometer, goes higher and higher. Now, trust though, you're carrying, as it grows, you're literally carrying gems. You're carrying light. So things can see that. This is why a lot of people don't have it because it gets drained from them. This is why they feel excited about something. Yo, it's about to happen. And then somebody come and crush it. We got another thing that we call eating it too fast. You expect something to happen in the future. So you calling folk, I got that check, baby, we got the job. And then 2 days later, they're like, oh, Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry to tell you, but we won't be hiring you. What happened? You talked about it too much. You put it in the ears of everything. And they moved behind the scenes and they love division. They love to see you upset, angry, because they eat that. No different than, like, what do I need to sustain myself on to stay in this vibration? That's what I consume. So what do they need to eat in order to stay in their vibration? Do you think everybody wants filet mignon? That's why I say we romanticize the whole thing. We don't realize that there's things that eat sewage, farts, nitrogen, gas, this kind of thing to sustain itself. And for us, we give off, they call us like a fruit in blossom that gives off a peculiar scent. This is how they talk about the humans. You see what I mean? As far as like in books of the jinn. And so the whole thing is also to kind of like to juice a human through the turmoil and pain that causes tears. Yeah. Oh, your tears taste delicious. Oh, they feed on the tears. So the goal is to fortify yourself, right? And if something then approaches you, if you may, which will generally be in like a physical form, like a human being. Yeah. You can then be on that neutral stage, right? So it's like if somebody just immediately come to you and start bowing down to you, yo, this is my master. You need to grab me like, yo, no, man, get up, man. Don't be doing that. Because that'll be the same person that stones you later on. You see what I mean? Woo-wee. Because they become so dependent on your energy and what you're about. When they don't get what they want from you, it's like very similar to when people don't get what they want from the God or the spirit. You see what I mean?
I've experienced that so many times, bro. That is facts. They will turn on you in a second, man. Wow.
Yeah. Man, I mean, it's a very, very, they say on the one side is deep water and on the other side is fire. Straight and narrow is the way. And this literally means that you're really thinking about the moves that you're making rather than you just haphazardly moving. Now, when I was young, I just haphazardly moved. And this is why when I would end up in situations, I wouldn't even know where to start with, as far as like, I had done so many things crazy, you know, in my mind, I didn't even really know what to tackle first. So this is why I was saying earlier that then when you have something that then just completely can reset that and say, hey, you're born again, it feels good. See, death is that real tradition. You die. Wow. Everything's gone now. Just forget about it. We're going to start over again. Even though you got all this baggage still in the DNA, you got attitude, kids got the same attitude you have. This is how you know it's hereditary. They literally inherit where you left off last. They are you. That was the whole thing with the Pharaoh, is the son was prepared to receive the Pharaoh's Ka and Ba. Same thing happens in the Tibetan traditions. When the Lama leaves, he comes back into another boy that's being born. Right. See what I mean? So this is that's another preparatory process in state, for graduating spirits. So that way they don't have just this 40, 50 years before they get stranded out in Bardo, and trying to wait for another ticket back into a reality and a body. Now, here's the thing that we need to talk about for a quick second is, so when I say when they need a body, that means a womb must be prepared. And thus, if the women are not in the condition to bring forth the avatar because they've been debased and degraded and not protected, this is the worst thing, because literally our continuum, our pipeline, where we come out at is rotten. And you got to think about like how many of us have come in lives with not so great parents. You see what I mean? Where they just like, we had to take care of ourselves. Sugar, water, and mayonnaise sandwich. You know what I mean? Like just real bottom level fiend for yourself kind of stuff, not the love and dad and mom and all that. You see what I mean? That comes from this generational not thinking about these things. Really more like, see, think about how when magic again gets used, especially witchcraft and these kind of things, it is really like, yo, I want this so much. Look at the desire for self to receive something that is so temporary. This can't go well. It's going to literally do you wrong anyway, because it is trying to show you, hey, this is too base, right? Like these things that you're asking for, this is like, you got something that's worth $1 million and you asking for $10. This can't go well once you sell that. You see what I mean? So that's where we got to think about ourselves more, because this reality, it wants to depress, which means to push a person down, to depress. You see what I mean? So it wants it has a Lord, which is the moon. It's the first celestial body, or the first ladder in the ladder of lights. And most people are under the Lord. You see what I mean? And that's the reign. That's the reign of the king. To something to reign, you need to be under it so that it can reign on top of you, right? And then it's also dominant position, meaning that on top is a dominant position. It's when you're on top, or the capstone, you're over everything else. So people have accepted something over them, and thus they've been pressed down and debased. So the power that they have is then offered up or given. Because when we say like, listen, it's the firstborn, we're not always just talking about a human soul baby. What we're talking about is new energy. That's why they like to talk about, hey, you're going to give the 10th of your offering to the Lord. And that's like, it's supposed to be the first part. You don't eat first before you give that to that. And it's an external gesture. You see what I mean? So it's not bringing it back into yourself, cooking it for the tribe. So yeah, I mean, it seems so obvious, but it ain't, right? Yeah.
Wow. Hey, Sevan, well, you're going to be back here in a week or two. We got an announcement we got to make for the family, but we're about to get out of here, family. I'm going to ask one more question from Troy. I think this is a good question to set the people on the path who want to study the occult. He says, what's 7 recommended path for an occult initiate? ? Let intuition guide ? All right.
If one even just estringes the conversation today and takes the gems that were brought forth, they will continue to flourish. Okay. What I mentioned today specifically, to make it very simple, was just to peep out that the ones that did the supplanting, that's literally what it's called, is to take someone else's birthright, basically to steal your gift. Yeah. They did that through a certain method, and that method is to absolve you of your sovereignty. Instead of first, of course, you see it as a spiritual thing, and you get yourself in alignment with that. That's going to allow like a domino effect to happen. Once that occurs, you can then start entering into these other arenas of sovereignty, i.e. the banking, i.e. the body, the medical, the courthouse, your property. You will find that all of a sudden things are releasing so that you're able to accomplish that. Many people simply go back to their deity after that, like, yo, thank you, Jesus. You see what I mean? Never realizing their own power, but I trust that that wouldn't happen with you. It's this awareness that following these procedures, I'm here to describe a way of life. It's working. It's great. The only problems I see is the problems that I create. So in that way, that allowing your body to tell you, like, this is what we need to do. Getting around good mentorship, if you may. That's why we call it sovereignty mentorship. We've been running sovereignty mentorship for 5, 6, oh man, I don't know. 9, 10 years now, sovereignty mentorship. People have gone through that entire process. Even people that are here on the line, tribe members that are here on the line, ambassadors that are here on the line. We have 4 tribes. We have the fire tribe, water tribe, earth tribe. You see what I mean? And these tribes correspond to what we feel like are the things that people are really need to get at first. Some, like in the air tribe, they just want to know the highest levels of esoteric knowledge. They also don't really want to be around everybody. It's like a bird mission. You solo up there, eagles fly alone. You see what I mean? So, and then there's the fire tribe. Those are like, look, I need to get my finances and my currency together. That involves working out. That involves, the business aspects of things, right? Some people, they need to learn to communicate. That's the water tribe. You see what I mean? They want to be orators. They want to do this. They want to be able to flow through different communities. So those are the aspects of how we put things together, because we realize it wasn't as simple as telling you like one statement, like, oh yeah, just do this. You need a support system. Everything that I even discussed today about deeper relations with occultism is all reflected within a tribe. It's all reflected within a family, from the bad, crazy uncle to the great grandmothers. All of those kind of things are all incorporated in that. Like even right now, there's like a idea where it's like, well, the great mother, the great mother is definitely balancing things out, but the great mother is also like your great, 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 great grandmother. And if you could imagine your great, great, great grandmother looking at some of the stuff that you're doing now and thinking that she's going to approve of it, then you ain't never had a great, great grandmother, to get a good pinch from, because she's looking at you like, get off my couch. You know what I mean? So there's energies there with all of these archetypes that we can become more familiar with in a way where it allows us to guide our lives the proper way. Because we're not lying to ourselves. As I said, we're not romanticizing the situation. We see it as it truly is, and then we're ready to stand into that. Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Powerful show, man. I always appreciate when you come on here, Sevan. I want his links. If y'all want his link, shout out to King Simon. He's always holding it down in the chat. He's posting Sevan's links in the chat. His YouTube, Instagram, Sybil website. Make sure y'all click on the links and support what Sevan got going on. This brother is, man, he be doing the work, y'all. He be doing the work. So and any last thing you want to say to the people before we get out of here, Sevan? Anything last?
Wow, like I said, kind of leaving it off the same way that we came in on it, and just giving thanks that we're here, we're alive, we're breathing, right? Like there's not impending ordnance fire, you know what I mean? Hopefully for all of us, and just we found our way through this, and there's some guidance happening.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like, or else, we wouldn't necessarily be in this state. Go all the way with it. Meaning that when you have this past to be able to go forward and you have this wisdom, this is a very unique opportunity. There's something really special about you. And I'm saying that because I know who I am. So there's a resonance law to all this information and this knowledge. You wouldn't be hearing it. You'd be somewhere else. It's Friday. There's a lot to do. But here you are, with the best of it. You know, that's when you look at these platforms. These are the platforms that have stood through time. You know what I mean? As many have fallen, you say, well, I've fallen by the wayside. You know, they offered it up. It's like they're passing the baton, like, yo, here. You know what I mean? This is where it's at. Like, especially, you know, this channel is huge, right? That's everybody that has come in so far, and all the messengers that have bought messages, and even the people that follow them come to this space to say, okay, just like their news, like, let me see what's new, like what's coming on tonight, what's talking. So, you know, who's talking? I appreciate that so much. And so I guess one of the final things that I'll say is that, remember though, in this time, it requires that this becomes your priority. Like, I would tell you, if you had a little bit more time, I even talk, like, if you go like during certain times in our whole conversations, when I know there's some room there, I'm not going to be putting a lot of pressure on the conversation. I'm going to talk about things that are like long haul, that could take you some time to actually incorporate, because I know, hey, it feels energetically that we have a few more years, a couple more years or whatever. Remember, I've been in this almost 18 years now, somewhere in there, right? So now, though, we're seeing the total fruition of everything that we could have thought, said as a conspiracy.
Yep.
As I said, with the information, super intelligence is here, whether a person is aware of it or not. Like, there is nothing that we've ever had that has literally every encyclopedia, every book, every other little nonfiction and fiction, every little tribe, every little everything, all in one thing. Now what's left is, I have this statement, and I say, yes, all is symbolism. What remains is the interpretation. And that's serious, because a lot of times people say, yeah, you know, these symbols, they mean so much, but they don't know really where these symbols come from and what they mean. And so we have some pioneering to do. We're just setting the foreground. We want to bring this knowledge intact as like I said, a lexicon, like, here. This is like our Bible. Turn to page 387 and read for me right here, so we can understand and get all on the same page about where this particular energy comes from, where this power comes from, what this crystal does, etc. Right? So we have that empirical knowledge, and then allow us to keep moving forward while, again, this is the time of so much distraction, right? There's so many things happening. Like, they buy, like, I should have, you know, they chill out on Puffy for a minute, but they got to come back around here in a moment with the verdict. You see me? So they amass so much attention with what's happening, and it discourages people. It's like a Thanos killing your hero kind of thing. Like, a lot of us grew up on this, right? And they're just kind of demolitioning every single pillar that people had built their fake sand kingdom on, right? Because in the end, none of that was really it wasn't going to survive this time. And that's what we should know. Get built in a design that's going to survive the time. Take your geometry, if you may, and put yourself into a form that will allow you to be able to persevere and move through this and thrive. And that's that sovereign design. So I wanted to say thanks to Brother Rich, you know, even making this happen today. You know, it was incredible. Like, he's been trying to get in touch with me. I had some disconnections on my side. So even us coming in today, you know, he even called me about something else. And I was like, yo, so what's up? You know, we gonna go in? He was like, yo, we could go in tonight. And I kind of paused for a moment, like, yo, tonight? You know, I don't know if I got anything prepared, but, you know, let's do it. And so it's here. And that means that there was something very special, you know, that was said. And so I trust that every person here felt or heard something special within the conversation today. That was my intention.
Beautifully said. Once again, shout out to everybody in the chat. Oh man, we got work to do after tonight. Sevan, man, he done set us on a journey tonight. So let's get busy. I hope y'all have a certain level of excitement. From hearing this man talk tonight, there should have been some type of excitement within yourselves. And with that excitement, carry that momentum, and let's keep this thing going, family. Sevan will be back in a couple of weeks. Like I said, we got a special announcement, so make sure y'all stay close by the channel to stay in touch with that right there. With that, I'll be back tomorrow night. King Simon, I'm gonna call you after the show because I want to ask you something about New York. Going to New York, so I'm gonna call you after the show, King. But with that being said, listen, I'm gonna see you tomorrow night, all right, family? Sevan, I'm gonna talk to you soon, my brother.
Absolutely, brother. In a minute.
Peace.
Love to the family.
All right. Family, I'll see you tomorrow night, all right? Have a good night. Peace.